Good evening, fellow board members. It is 5:30 and I will call this board meeting to order. It is a full agenda, everybody. It may be so full we may have to take a little bit of a recess in the middle. We'll see how we handle all of tonight's very important topics. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call to ascertain a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chair Patrick Molina.
Here.
Vice Chair Martha Barrera.
Here.
Member Heather Anderson.
Here.
And Member Aaron Hamilton.
Here.
And Secretary Dottie McKinney here.
We have ourselves a quorum. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time away from your family to be here for this meeting. And let's kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance, Miss Karen. You should see the flag pop up on your screens. Maybe. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. For everyone in our attendees room, this is time for public comment regarding any item on the agenda. Let me make it clear this is for anything on the agenda. There is an opportunity for public comment toward the end of the meeting for any matter, whether it is on or off the agenda. So you are welcome to make your comments. They need to be 2 minutes or less in duration. Please state your name, your relationship to the school, and the agenda item which you are speaking about. And like I said, comments regarding any other topics, feedback, whatnot, is going to be handled at a later agenda item time. So if you would like to make a public comment regarding any item on the agenda, please raise your hand and Ms. Karen Werner will promote you to the panel and we'll give you your time.
Yeah, that's to raise the digital hand or put your name in the chat and we'll call on you to give your comment about items on the agenda. I'm not seeing any. We have a long list of oh, we got one here. Lisa Black, which shall I promote her? She's raising her hand.
Yes, please.
Okay. Miss Black, if you could unmute yourself, you're welcome to make your comment to the governing board.
Hi, thank you. I'm Lisa Black. I'm a parent of a 9th grader at Explorer Academy. And I believe on the agenda tonight is consideration of the calendar for next year, 2025-2026 school year. And I just want to, I want to speak to encourage the board to strongly consider prioritizing. I know you have many things to consider, but if you could prioritize a calendar that is, that gives a longer term length, given other priorities that you have to consider. I'm concerned about the length of the terms. They're already really compressed. I was actually reviewing this past March, board meeting video that you guys have online, and Mr. Anthony Branch was speaking about ways to encourage families and kids to stay at the school that they're he was talking to why the reasons why some students and families leave the school. And if I'm not going to quote the exact numbers, I don't have them written down, but it was over 20% of students that do leave the school claim they want a more traditional school calendar, and others say that the academics are very rigorous. I enjoy the term system. I think it's great for certain kids, including my own. But to go to such a shortened term could really hurt those numbers and trying to keep kids that are leaving, try to get them to stay. And I know you're considering tonight 2 4-day calendars, one with 20 days terms and one with 21-day terms. And I just want to encourage the board to consider the 21-day term if you're going to be choosing between those two rather than the 20-day term. I just think adding those additional 8 days of term instruction is really important for our kids. If you only go with the 20-day term, you're looking at 160 term instruction days, and that just seems so little compared to 180 days that we had this year. I'm estimating it
10 seconds. 10
might have been
seconds to finish up.
179, but that's my ask for you to consider tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you so much, Miss Black. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and comments. Really do.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please feel free to raise a hand and we'll promote you to the panel and give you the time. And I'm going to really take my time because folks are probably trying to figure out how to raise their hands. So take your time, no rush. We're not going to rush off without you.
Oh, Ms. Greaves has raised her hand.
All righty.
I know she signed up for this afternoon, but maybe she has something about for the later comment, but maybe she has something for this agenda.
Sure.
For the agenda.
Sure.
Ms. Greaves, if you'd like to make your comment about something on the agenda, you're welcome to unmute and do so.
Hello. So my question is, how does this calendar, did you actually consider how the calendar meets the needs of our at-risk students, specifically students of color? If you look at our current test scores, you will see that we are well beneath meeting their needs. So how do all of your calendar choices meet their needs, specifically ELD students or ELLs?
And public comment is just an opportunity to speak to the
Okay.
board. So even though
So
you're
if you
posing a
would
question,
consider.
and they can certainly take that into consideration and perhaps address it during the agenda item, but they're not allowed to respond, Ms. Green.
That's fine. Just so long as it is considered, because we are not meeting the needs of our ELs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greaves.
Thank
All right. Looks like Amy's iPad has a hand up.
Yes, sir. Let me just move this one to attendee, move this one. Promoting Amy's iPad. Amy's iPad, if you had a comment to make, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, trying to figure out the technical stuff here. And my
Yeah,
camera's
no
not on.
worries.
I apologize. First of all, thank you for taking the time to include us in this decision as a community. I have a kindergartner that's promoting to first grade. And my concern, I guess, ask would be to consider, if we're going to a 4-day calendar, the Friday enrichment days. She and I think several young kids really struggle in large group loud environments. She has to wear silencing headphones in the cafeteria and for pep rallies. And I'm just hoping that the enrichment days are small groups, and not just small groups in the cafeteria, but small groups in classrooms, so that the little ones can really benefit from the enrichment days on Fridays. And my other comment would be, as a working parent, if we're going to 4-day calendars, if it could be considered to please extend the 4 days in the afternoons, so that we could work more on those days, later in the day, and then rather than having the day extended in the morning. And those are my asks. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, could you give me your last name for the minutes, Amy?
Yes, it's hyphenated. I'll spell it. It's ELLIOTT-O''NEILL.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as all of our attendees can appreciate, there's a lot to discuss tonight, and we do appreciate the input. Any other hands? I'm scrolling to see if anybody else. Jill Zach.
That was from the last one, sorry. My words, sorry.
All right.
Hi, Miss Zach. If you could
Hi.
unmute yourself.
Am I
Um,
unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I have the platform appropriate. So I'm just
Okay.
appreciate being here. I can't see myself or know if I'm on camera or not, but like, it's a little odd, but I'm trying to just make sure that I can speak if I need to speak later.
Yes, so we see you, but we just see your name. So your camera, it appears as if your camera is off, but you were able to, we can
Hey,
certainly
I don't
hear
know
you.
how to do that. Okay.
Yeah,
Hello.
you can hear.
There you are.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
It's a very important meeting to me. I appreciate all of your guys' work and I'm here. So thank you. That's it. I just want to make sure. I was having a hard time understanding the platform, which is unusual, but I get it. I'm just trying to be here.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you later. Yeah.
I will be quiet. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Very
So just to
good.
clarify for Ms. Zach, she will be in the audience until we get to the agenda item where she wishes to speak. She's here in support of your closed session.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good.
So I just want
Excellent.
to clarify, Ms. Zach, you'll be in the attendees and won't be visible or heard until it's time for that item, agenda item, and we'll promote you to the panel at that time. Okay. I think that might have been what confused her.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. And any more comments from any of the folks who've taken time out of their valuable evenings to be here? Looking, I don't see any more hands, but I want to make sure everybody gets a shot. So if they're not used to this platform, they may need a moment to navigate, which I can appreciate. All right. Well, then I think we are going to close item M2, which is public comment. Again, thanks to all who raised a hand, came on, and shared their thoughts and concerns. Really, really appreciate the effort. All right.
Also, I just want, Chair Molina, I just want the audience to know I'm going to disable the chat for now because we don't want sidebar conversations in the chat. But I will reopen it when we get towards the end of the meeting for the other public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we will move to item number 3, ladies and gentlemen, the approval of this evening's agenda. I will make the motion to approve the current agenda as written and published. If I may have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Martha. It's been properly seconded. All right, folks, do we have any questions, comments, concerns with regards to tonight's very full agenda? My only comment is we might need to, and I'll move and do this later, but under item number 8, item B is the school year 26 contracts for financial services and legal services. We might have to push that off to next month. And I'm leaning very hard to do that because I'd like to get everybody's documentation in on that. So if we run out of time or if the meeting just gets way too long, I will move to do that. Aside from that, we'll leave it on the agenda, obviously because it was published that way, but just to let everybody know that we might defer that a month so that we're best prepared and in the mindset to handle that appropriately, all. But aside from that, I think the agenda is full and will make for a very colorful meeting. No, if there's no further discussion, Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve this evening's agenda?
Yes. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Right into item number 4, the approval of our last regular meeting minutes, which was April 8th. I move to approve the minute meetings from our regular board meeting on April 8th, 2025. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Heather. Has been properly seconded. Any changes, edits. I looked through it. It looked tight. It was a great little meeting. Um, I didn't see any omissions and I didn't see any misspellings, which I was always hampered by when I was the secretary. But any further discussion for those of you who had the opportunity? Very good. Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to for the motion of approving the regular meeting minutes from April 8th, 2025?
Yes. Patrick Molina.
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
Dottie McKinney, aye.
Thank you all very much. The meeting minutes from April 8th are approved. All righty. Let's get into the finance reports for those of you who this may be your first meeting in a long time, or perhaps even your first meeting. We always conduct our finance committee meetings in the open, just like this. This is taxpayer money that we're talking about during these meetings, and we like to have these in the wide open. So what you're about to see, we do every single month. And welcome to the panel, Miss Katie Rarick, one of our business management gurus. Hi, Katie.
Hey guys.
All right, take us through.
All right, I will share my screen for a very exciting meeting. Okay. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is the check register. I don't know if anyone had any questions about anything that was on the check register.
No, and I even looked for something and I couldn't find anything really,
Glaring.
yeah, no, glaring or even worthy of one of our little in-house audits. This is not a good time to do that. We'll probably do one of those in like July. But yeah, this is all standard fare month to month.
Okay. Here's our bank reconciliation. So we are seeing some of our RFRs coming in more, which is good. And then I'll report where we are on the funds and what we need to do for each of the funds. But this is our current bank reconciliation. We have about 1.2 in the bank. Here are the outstanding payments. There weren't any voids. And here are a handful of here are the receipts that came in. You can see a lot of these are from student payments. Here's some more of our state payments, IDFB, CTE. These are items that are being deposited, as well as one of the big things that came in is our lease assistance money came in for quarter 2, 1 and 3. So 1, 2, and 3. There we go. And here are a handful of JAs that we had to do just to kind of move stuff around to the different funds. You're going to see some more of these as we close the fiscal year.
Yep, we always do.
That's a blank page. So those are.
Can I ask real quick, Katie? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
On the, I noticed that we still have those 2 checks that are outstanding from May of 2024 and December of 2024. I forget, I think we had discussed this last time, but at what point do we cancel those checks?
We should cancel them now. So.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that, I think at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we may have. And I forgot. All right, I will get them to cancel them. Oh, I think I reached out to, I don't know if I reached out to Brittany or not. I will put them on my list so to cancel. And count. Let's see. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'll go in and void that one today, the 513. Okay, as far as the fund balance goes, so anything in green says that we're within budget authority and that we've moved stuff around to make sure that we are, we're using up as much as possible. This one here is highlighted in yellow, the 24176, because I wasn't sure if we had more funding coming for this fund or not, but I don't think we are. Lisa confirmed. So that one actually is complete and we have spent it all. Some of these others are smaller amounts. Some of them roll over. Some of them we're working on getting the RFRs in. RFRs are due very soon, but for the most part, we have spent most of the funds down that we can, that we have budget authority over. This 28221 is your kitchen grant. If we get the expenses in on time, I mean, we've purchased, so we need this needs to be submitted to DFA. It's a little bit different process than submitting to PED. But if they get in, then we will draw down the rest of this grant before the end of the year. We have spent almost all your lease. Well, we've spent all your lease assistance except 257. It's a very small amount. And then these are your HB 33 and SB 9 funds, and we will be spending all of these by the end of the year when we pay for rent. So overall, everything is balanced, and we are spending stuff down.
On the kitchen fund, that was a federal grant, correct? That came from the feds.
That one is, ooh, it's a 28211. I don't know if the money came, I think the money came to the USDA department at
Okay.
the state, and then the state allocated it out.
Right.
So it's like one of those pass-throughs.
Okay. And then, but it doesn't have to, does it all have to be spent in this fiscal year? Okay,
No,
I didn't
we
think
have
so because
several.
there's, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Excellent.
And a lot of these do carry over, but
Yeah, which is great.
yeah, that one does.
All right, very good.
And
mean,
really, the thing with that is they've been purchased. I just don't know if we've received them, and we can't pay for it till we receive it.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that part of that, of course, is the work being done on the kitchen, which was, it was put off a little bit just for safety, to do the epoxy flooring, but the rest of that process is actually pretty quick. So hopefully we're only after students get out next Friday, hopefully we're only talking about a 2-week turnaround to finish it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So
Yeah, that would be great.
The one thing I will flag, if my mouse wants to work, is this budget, after you approve your bar today, will change. These numbers are pulled directly from OBMS. And so once we update the budget in OBMS, we'll update these budget amounts. So next time these numbers are going to look a little bit different.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that when we get to the bar.
Yeah, we have what, 5 of them tonight? 6 of them? 7.
Five or
It grew.
They did, yeah. We got one today, and then we had the decrease bar that I forgot to send. So those are your those are the financial documents, I guess, for today. And then do you want me to go into the bars?
Let's go ahead and vote on the financial reports as stated, and then we'll go into the bars and we'll just do sort of a slate vote on all 7 of those, and then vote on the end of year. I think everybody on this board's been through one of those cycles. I think maybe not Heather, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So I move to approve the financial reports, including the check register, bank reconciliation, receipts and journal entries, and the fund balance for the month ending April 30th, 2025. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Martha. Properly seconded. Any further questions, comments, concerns? I do have one. Katie, I think it seems like an eon ago. I think you sent us, but I can't find it anywhere. On that last report that we just looked at, all the funds, if you will. I think you sent me a decoder ring on that, on what each one of those fund numbers goes
Oh.
to,
Mm.
and I can't find mine. Could you resend that? Because
Mhm.
some of these numbers are familiar, but a lot of them are not. And I think, at least for me, I know I would benefit by knowing that how to decipher those.
Yeah.
And I bet there's another board member or two out there who could probably benefit from that too. So
Yeah, I sometimes forget that you guys don't like memorize all these codes for
yeah, we
some
don't.
reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I'll just put it on the report next time because that's
Okay, that'd be fine too. That'd be fine. But I know a lot of times in some of the bars and all of that, and it's just nice to have that list of the number and then what it is, and maybe
Yeah.
even who the funding authority is on that, right? Is it a state? Is it federal? Is it a grant? Is it a whatever it is? So
yeah,
that'd be great. Like I guess it's probably been 2 years
I think it's
or
yeah, I know
more.
what you're talking about. It was
Yeah,
yeah.
remember?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's probably time to refresh that and send it out to us board members, just so that we're tight on that. I love your explanations, but it'd be nice to be able to see what color of money is being spent. Like I said, I lost mine.
Yeah, not a problem. I can do it.
Wonderful. All right. Any further discussion on that motion to approve the financials? Very well. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the financial reports, including the check register, bank reconciliation, receipts, journal entries, and the fund balance reports for the month ending April 30th, 2025? You are muted, Miss Dottie.
I apologize. Can you tell me who seconded the motion?
Miss Martha. Miss
Thank you,
Martha.
Martha. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right, our financial reports are closed. We continue on with our finance committee meeting and look at the purchase orders, invoice, proof of payment. Oh, and this was for the Carolina Biological Supply Company. That's right. That's right. That's right. This will be our last one probably until we get into the new fiscal year because there's so much going on. So for those of you in the attendees gallery, the board will, I don't know, 3, 4 times a year, pick a purchase order that you saw on that uh, the receipts in the bank reconciliation. Will pick one and say, show us the purchase process. How did that work? Because that is an audit item that we are looked at every year. So we kind of conduct our own little mini audit randomly. Katie has no idea which one we're going to pick. And then we want to make sure that the process is robust and complete. So Miss Katie, would you please share with us that the Carolina Biological Supply Company process?
Yep, so here's the purchase order. We must have known we were ordering these early on, and it was approved on 7/25. And there's the coding. So 11,000 is the fund, which is operational. 1,000 means it was used in the classroom. 56118 means it's a supply. 1010 means it's for regular education versus like special education. And then there's no job associated with it. So the zeros up. So we allocated $6,000 to this vendor to purchase science materials. Here's the invoice that we received from them. It came after the PO was approved. And this one, we do order stuff throughout the year, but this one was for $51. And here is the check that was cut with the signatures.
Excellent. Yeah. And for those in the gallery, we pick, like I said, random ones. Sometimes they're several $1,000s, sometimes they're $51. And we want to make sure that the process is always robust, regardless of the dollar amount. So we look at even the little ones on occasion. Very good. So thank you for that. I don't think we need a vote on that. It was just a quick check-in to make sure that we are following our documented process on proper purchasing. Excellent. All right. So I will, going on to item B, is the budget adjustment requests, which are often referred to as bars. I'll go ahead and make a motion so that you can present them all, and then we can just vote at the very end. I move to approve the budget adjustment requests ending in 0032D, 0033I, 0034I, 0035I, 00636I, 0037I, and 0038I. Aye. A motion, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Miss Martha. All right, now bring them out. We'll discuss, and at the very end, we can finish the discussion and vote.
Okay. All right, so this is the big one. This was coming and this is baked into your financials. So this is actually not as scary as it looks. We knew this like in August, September. But it took PD a while to do all the reconciliations and get us the final numbers. But this is why our budget is tight this year, which we knew it was going to be, because we are having to do a $2 million decrease in our operational funding based on enrollment. So it's the decrease bar. We took them from various parts of the current budget based on what our actual spending is. So we, like I said, next time we'll see a slight decrease on your budget. We tried to take as little away from as possible from instructional. For the biggest chunk came from rental land and buildings, and the reason for that is because your SB9 and HP 33 money help plug this.
Is it just me, or should we ask Katie to make that just a little bit bigger? So, some of these aging eyes.
Oh,
could use
sorry.
A little bit larger print there, Katie.
There you go.
Thank you.
I thought you were saying make the 2 million bigger. I was like,
Oh,
no,
no. Please.
I don't want to do that.
No.
Okay. All right. So that's the big bar for today. All right, so then the rest are all increase bars. That's the decrease bar, but the increases do not equal the decrease, just so we know. All right, so this is what we do about this time of year is we go through the general ledger and we might get small amounts like from student fees or various funding sources that are just like little bits of money. And so we want to bar them because that will make our budget authority larger and help us, tag more expenses to those. So during the audit, we don't get a finding for going over budget authority. So this first one is for $700. And this was, I think, student fees that we received. This one is a small private donation that we received. They're all going to operational. So it's just to tie out these small pots of money that we receive in our operational budget. This one is an increase for food. It's not a lot of money. It's $2,000, but it's just that the budget, we kind of guesstimate at the beginning of the year what our USDA budget's going to be. And then we do a reconciliation at this time.
Can you zoom in a bit more?
Oh, sorry. I forgot about the zooming, guys. That's my fault. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, see, to zoom in each one. Okay, so this is Medicaid. We have received $30,000 to date for Medicaid. Again, this is not anything that officially comes through PED. This comes from another vendor via the federal government. And so we just get this allocation essentially dumped into our bank account. And so we have to bar it.
Absolutely.
All right, this one. Again, this is another amount that we got. Oh, I wish they told me what it was. What is 546? Hold on. I'm going to tell you because I want to know. And unfortunately, I don't have all of these things memorized. But I'm going to tell you what this was. So I don't know what this would have been. And you guys get to see OBMS, the exciting system. Very exciting.
Aaron, while Katie's looking that up, could you promote my other account?
Other account, Mr. Hamilton. Let me see what we've got. I wasn't looking for you, so give me a second. Yes, I see you there. Thank you.
Special items. All right, what is this revenue? Anyway. Oh, this is the HJ Sims project money. So this is the money that we received to help with the building. Do we remember that? You guys remember that funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that is, I was like, what is this? Okay, yes, that's what
Gotcha.
that is. So we received that earlier in the fiscal year, and now we're just borrowing it so that we receive essentially spending authority over it.
Perfect.
And this one is hot off the press. It came in today. This is for your Title II funding. It's a small increase bar to your funding.
Small again.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. There we go. And so it's $7,000. If we can't allocate expenses to this by the end of the year, because this is an RFR, this money will roll over.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay.
So those are all your bars.
All right. And it's Heather, I think this might be your first end of year on the board, correct?
It is.
No, it is. Yeah. So this is very, very common, is just moving some of the monies around. We get some money late in the year that we have to allocate appropriately, and we have to let the state know where it's going.
Okay.
So these are very, very common. I remember my first year was like, oh my gosh, look at all this money moving around. And it's money that's been there. It just needs to be, like Katie said, properly allocated so that when when audit time comes, which is annually, we can show that we can account for all of the money and that the state knew what we were doing with all of it. So it's a little bit of a tedious process, but a very necessary one.
So it's essentially just putting everything in the right boxes, it seems like.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
A
And in some cases,
reconciliation. Yeah.
and in some cases, we can actually move money from one area to another if that money's movable. So if there's something in operations that needs a little bit of extra money, but we've got a surplus somewhere else, sometimes that can be barred over.
Okay.
And so a lot of times the bar is just moving the monies around a little bit, so that we take care of all of our expenses. So um, a very clean process that keeps everything square and straight. And I think since I've been on the board, I don't think we've ever gotten a finding with regards to our bars or to allocation. I've never, yeah. So we do a great job at this. When I say we, I mean Katie.
Thank you.
It's
Katie.
all of us. It's a joint effort.
Right. But bringing it here and showing everybody how it works and explaining how it works, I think is really important. Because it looks like a ton of money. I mean, 22 or $7,000 is a bit of money, right? But when you look at the entire budget, it's a small piece, but we have to account for all of those bits and pieces. So, fellow board members, any questions, comments, concerns with regards to any of the bars that Miss Katie presented this evening? What I like about the bars is you can see the fund number and then what it's for. So yeah, Katie, again, if you can put that up, that'd be great. All right. Well, if there's no further discussion on the bars, Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the budget adjustment requests ending in 0032D, 0033I, 0034I, 0035I, 0036I, 0037I, and 0038I?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Wonderful. I'm trying to manipulate my screens here. Very good. Okay, item C, everybody. This is a new one for Heather. At the end of the year, between board meetings are a bunch of bars just tweaking the numbers so that everything lines up perfectly. We won't have a finance committee meeting between the end of the school year, the fiscal year, or between our last meeting and the end of the fiscal year. So what the board does historically is we designate one person on the board to approve those year-end bars, and then we bring them to the board the following board meeting to show everybody what we did. So nothing is done in secret. It's just that as opposed to having special little board meetings for that, we designate somebody to approve those, and then we do reconcile that and show the board everything that happened in that small period. I want to say last year it was like two or three. It was very few last year, if memory serves. So again, they're always necessary, but they're always reviewed in the finance committee, even though we delegated the authority to one person, they're always reviewed. So in years past, I was the guy, but anybody on the board can be delegated to do that. So would anybody like to do that? Be the designee? Don't all rush.
That's you, Patrick.
And that's totally fine. I'm always happy to do it. Always happy to do it. So, if everybody's okay with me doing that again, I'm more than happy to do it. We just need to vote on making me the designee to do that. And then, like I said, we always review it after the fact. So, well then, would somebody move to approve me as the designee? Because it would be rather self-serving if I made the motion.
I'll move to approve Patrick as the designee to approve our end of year bars through June 30th.
I can
Second.
second.
Sorry.
Very good.
Thanks,
Thank
Aaron.
you, Miss Martha. Thank you, Aaron. And again, everything's on the up and up. Nothing goofy happens. All right. Well then, let us do a roll call vote, Miss Dottie. To yes, ma'am.
I think we need a second.
It
We
was
got a second. Aaron seconded.
Aaron did, okay.
Yeah, we got it.
A little issue keeping up with my ears and my fingers tonight.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. So Martha moved. Aaron seconded.
I didn't hear him.
And now we're ready to do the vote.
Okay,
To designate Patrick as the approving person for the end of year bars through June 30th. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
And Dottie McKinney, aye.
All righty. We'll probably see these in the July meeting. We'll show you what bars were presented. All righty. Okay, here's a heavy lift here. This is the financial forecast for SY26 and the budget. We will go ahead and have it presented, and then we'll do the vote later on. Is this the same budget that we showed everybody at the town hall a couple of weeks ago?
Similar.
Okay, very good. So what we're about to see, our community got to see at the town hall. They got to see a nicer version of it. We're going to see the details of it. They got to see kind of a general version of the budget, just so that it was easier to explain and digest. Now you're going to see the nitty gritty. All right, Miss Katie, it's all you.
All right. I have to say, for the first time in a long time, very excited about our budget next year. I feel like it's very conservative, which is my favorite kind of budget. And we've worked very, very hard on this budget, given all the changes that have been happening. So I want to thank Karen, Patrick, Jake, everyone that has been on these long calls with me and PED to try to figure out the best way to do this to make sure the school has the resources they need. And the calendar plays a huge part in it. So the first thing I want to talk through are changes. There are a lot of changes, especially for Explore. So when we look at the changes between last year and or this current year, which is FY25, and next year, which is FY26, we can see what changed. The biggest change for you guys, one of the biggest changes, I guess I should say, is this at-risk multiplier. And it doesn't look like a lot, but it resulted in $1 million difference for you all because it went down by so much. And so revenue's kind of everywhere across the board. here's the at-risk totals. So that's the $1 million. So that's what these little multipliers did. This year we got 1.5. Next year we're slated to get $463,000. ELL is a new multiplier. So yes, we did get money, but it did not make up for this $1.1 million decrease.
So, Katie, would you please explain the Santa Fe reason why that multiplier was reduced?
Yes, so until this year, these multipliers were based on the district. So they were based on all of APS, and anyone under that APS umbrella, whether you're an APS charter or state charter, as long as you resided in that district, you got their multiplier. And so that was one of the reasons. And the at-risk used to be based on mobility, graduation rates, and poverty levels. They've now changed this multiplier to only look at poverty levels. So mobility and graduation rates, I don't think are part of it anymore, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's now only based on the students at your school. So that's no longer based on the district, it's based on the school. And you guys have such a very small school, when you think of APS as a whole, that your student population is not the same as APS. And so for those reasons, it went down drastically because the rule or the legislation up in Santa Fe changed for this fiscal year.
Thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of folks in our attendee gallery are curious as to where did the money go? And I think that's a very, very valid question. And that's where a lot of our money went, was in that math from Santa Fe. Thank
Yep.
you. Continue.
Yeah. And so the calendar that I think we're proposing tonight is a 4-day-a-week calendar, has 175 days a year. That is a difference between what we currently have this year and next year, but the way the funding works, you actually get more funding for going 175 days, 4 days a week, than you do going 5 days a week, 195 or 197 days. And Pat acknowledged that that is the way the formula works. In addition to that, so one of the reasons we have such a large bump in our K-12 plus numbers is because we are doing the 4-day-a-week. And so that number would not be nearly as large if we kept the same calendar. It would be slightly larger than 1.7, but it would not be significant. It would not be enough to combat that $1 million loss, which is essentially what we were trying to figure out. The unit value went up, the unit value by 3.7%. The unit value, though, what that is like the main driver for the state funding. So they take all of these different metrics, they take all of the multipliers, includes PE, fine arts, growth, at-risk, ELL, days on your calendar, all this stuff, and enrollment, and then it multiplies by that ending unit value. So when that goes up, all your funding goes up, but it also depends on what they do with the multipliers within the formula.
And a unit is a student, correct?
No, the unit is a student can be worth 1.3 units. So it's how much they then take that unit and multiply it by the amount of money. So for maybe one student, you take 1.3, you multiply it by $6,801. And and it depends. Yeah. That's just
It's dependent on the student, right? Like if the student is a certain grade level, it's a different multiplier. If it's a student with special needs, it's a different multiplier, ELL. Like it's all based on the student, although a student could be worth more than one to serve.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I knew there was a tie-in with the student. I just couldn't explain it to myself. So thank you for the clarification.
And so our overall funding from last year to this year did go up 1.9, but again, the only way we made that happen is by changing our calendar days to get that additional funding in the K-12 plus line. So all of this is, I mean, it would take me probably an entire day showing you lines and lines and lines of rows and data and explaining the funding formula, which is clear as mud. So it's a fairly complicated formula and it's a fairly complicated process. But these are the kind of the highlights on what's going on with revenue. And then when we look at expenses, while revenue, some went up, some went down, expenses only went up. And that's kind of like, if you took one thing away from this conversation, that's what you should take away from it. So the minimums changed. Salary minimums used to be 50, 60, 70. This year they went up 55, 65, 75. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 10%. And it is a lot when you have a staff the size of Explore. In addition to that, mandatory salary increases went changed to be for at least 4% for all staff. And it's not an average, it's everyone. It's a 4% or higher. And the reason I say higher is because of these mandatory minimums. Health insurance also went up 6%. You guys have risk insurance, which insures the contents of the building. It's workers' comp insurance. It's, you know, if someone gets hurt on a bus or a plane on a field. So that insurance went up drastically. The average was 16%. Your guys's was 24%. And then rent went up, and that's just 4%, but that's just based on your rent schedule that we've had for for years. So
Guys, can I just clarify real quick? I apologize.
Mhm.
The health insurance line shows that this fiscal year it was 6%. Next fiscal year it's remains at 6%.
So the FY25 was 6% and FY26 is at 6%. So each of these, each year it's gone up 6%, if that's not clear on the chart. Because last year they started with a 15% increase to bring us up to like the rates, the actual funding rates. And everyone said that's too much. Our budgets cannot survive a 15% increase in health insurance. And so the agreement was we'll split it between the 2 years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, and I'll make this bigger. It's even hard for me to see. Okay, so here's all of the revenue that we are looking at tonight. A lot of these come from this year and actual. So here are some of those student fees that we record throughout the year that come in, whether they're for activities or food, snacks after school. So this is based on our current projection for revenue. This $2 million, what that is for is our, that's SB9, HB33 funding. And so that's based on this year too. It might go up a little bit. Next year might be a little bit higher. The next one is the SEG. So this is the funding from the state. And so this is the funding that we were just talking about and all the different changes that essentially went up and down due to whether it is the unit value, the at risk, the different funding, or sorry, the different multipliers. I'm just going to bring your other budget up in case there are questions. Okay. Next we have, not that. Next, we have your state flow-through grants. And so your state flow-through grants are like CTE, your GOB library, and you have state SB9 dollars. So this is SB9 that comes from the state, does not come from the county. The next thing we have is your state direct grants. This is our USDA funding, but through the state of New Mexico, not directly from USDA. And then we have your transportation allocation, which we received about a week ago. This is what we're projecting you getting for lease assistance. This is based on $815 times every student you guys had in FY25. So this is prior year enrollment. So if you have 10 kids in FY25 and you have 100 kids in FY26, you're only going to get funded on those 10 kids because it's prior year enrollment. So for you guys, this number was 13. And then this is Ed Fellows, this 189,520, and it helps to fund some of your EA programs. I put this in here. I'm not sure if we're doing the program again. I'm not sure if they're going to have the funding again. But it matches the salaries for the EA folks that are in your budget. Here's your USDA funding. Again, this is based on our current year actuals. So it's an estimate. It will change next year. But this comes directly from the feds, and here are all your other federal funding grants, again, that come directly from the federal government. So your total revenue that we are anticipating having in one form or another, one way or another, is almost $26 million. Any questions on the revenue before I move on to the expenses?
Are we anticipating any changes in the 44,000 numbers from the federal government with all the changes in the new administration?
No, not yet. The only one here that is a bit of a gap, like we've gotten Title IV, we've gotten Title I, Title II. The Perkins, we have estimates for the Perkins redistribution is 10,000. We actually got that number. Medicaid's an estimate, but super low. You saw we got 30 this year, maybe get 30 next year. IDA is the one we don't know. We still don't have those numbers. This is based on this year's, so it's an estimate, but I haven't seen your IDA funding yet.
And for the folks in our attendee gallery, can you explain what the IDEA is?
Yeah, IDEA is your federal funding, but for special education. So it goes for special education salaries. Yeah, Jake.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick question. I remember we had talked prior to this about the hold harmless that they were putting into there. Where is that reflected in this? There was talk about some a hold harmless funding, but I didn't thoroughly understand that. My understanding is it didn't help sufficiently prior, but I don't know where that appears on this if it does.
It appears in this 19 million. So $700 of this $19 million is hold harmless for you.
$700?
Yep.
I see.
So I know, yeah. So you really don't get hold harmless, and why they did it, which is another. So there's like a handful of schools, not a handful. There's actually quite a few schools, like 15, 20, that all of these weird changes impacted negatively. They're all coming together to show the legislature how this impacted them negatively. So that's one of the things I get to do tomorrow, is to put together the analysis I essentially did for Explore Albuquerque, but for the schools that I have on this list, and there are 3 of them, Explore being one of them. And so in there, it does ask your hold harmless units and your hold harmless amounts. There's one school who got 0. And because what they did for schools that are growing, they again compared units to units. It doesn't make sense because you can't, that's comparing apples to oranges. They needed to compare like the same number of kids to the same number of kids year over year. So schools that aren't growing got more hold harmless units and got more money. You guys are growing. You guys got less. So it is a flaw in the calculation, if you ask me.
Gotcha. And in terms of what you were mentioning of the schools that are looking at it, just to put it out there, I think I've seen that list, and there are 17 charter schools that are facing similar financial situations as we were. 17 that are on that list are of charter schools. There are probably more that just were not included there.
Yeah, and I haven't put in your analysis, but Explore might be the one biggest hit. Just looking at the numbers, I think you guys might be.
Hey, do you know if there are, or do you work with any charter schools that this helped them just because of their at-risk formula actually goes up, like it goes up above and beyond? And I'm curious if APS's formula went up because they're calculating it differently, just given the demographics in comparison from Explore Academy to APS.
So I have not, well, the APS charters we work with, yes, their at risk went up. Also, some of the state charters we work with, their at risk went up, and they are like 80 to 85% low and reduced lunch like numbers. Like they're pretty severe poverty, or they have a huge ELL population. And so it did and I'm all for giving those schools more money, but I also want our school to have more money, right? Like I wish the hold harmless actually did its job, and it didn't. And I think that's one of the problems with the formula. So I think there's enough money in Santa Fe to go around for everyone, and whoever did the analysis, I think, did it wrong.
I think I saw a headline over the last week where even though APS has a 20,000 student lower admission, their budget is $100 million greater than it was last year.
Yeah.
So that may very
That's
well be
crazy.
because of some of that money as well. So, and I agree. Those students need that help and support, absolutely. But it doesn't, I don't think the state is in a position where they need to steal from one segment to
Right.
pay for the other. But that's just my humble thought on
Yeah,
it.
I agree. And I guess that is the problem with, what was I going to say? The formula. But yeah, I wish that the at-risk, I was going to address the question that did come up during comments, which was that, how are we helping our at-risk students? And like, if we don't have this calendar with this extra funding, we actually have multiple scenarios when we don't do this, and we have to start cutting teachers. And I don't think that's going to help with at-risk kids. So that was one of the reasons we did decide to go this route, because we were kind of put between a rock and a hard place if we were going to have a budget with the staffing we need for our kids. So.
Ms. Karen?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say that I don't know how the PED funding formulas all work and how they determined it all, but I do want to just respond to Member Hamilton that there are several charter schools who've been lobbying for a while about their opinion is that it's been unfair that everybody gets the same thing if you're in Albuquerque, when in fact there are pockets of schools that might serve a higher need, like Katie was just saying, schools that have 80 or 85%.
Right.
And so there was a lot of lobbying over the last several years to change all of this. I don't know if this is all related to that or what really happened, but also I want to just point out that our school, your school, is one of the largest charter schools in the state. I think the only other one that comes close is Mission Achievement Success. And so most charter schools are very small. And so, the larger you are, the bigger the hit will be, particularly if they don't do the hold harmless the way they did. And just those two factors. It's not anything, doesn't solve any problems, but I just wanted to share that I do know a lot of the smaller charter schools who serve potentially a higher need population, have been lobbying for some changes on this funding formula in this way, and also that the size of our school. I mean, we're larger than many school districts in this state.
Yes, that's true.
Absolutely. All right. I am going to hold the vote on the budget because we need to get through the calendar options vote first. Because
And sorry.
that's going to dictate. Yeah, no, you're good. I'm just putting that out there. That's going to dictate the budget we approve. So just a heads up on that, everybody. Continue.
Okay, so again, this budget is based on 1510 4-day a week. So 1510 kids, 4-day a week. So I do feel like it's somewhat conservative. So our compensation, when we add up all of our different positions here, is 12.4 million. And then we add in the benefits, which again went up. That's just how I copy and paste it. There's nothing special about unemployment compensation. Is 4.6. And really, we're not hiring that many people. We're hiring like a handful of new people, or some people are moving around to different positions, but for the most part, the staffing structure stays kind of flat. Here, all of these numbers are based on your current actuals, and I've grossed them up to try to anticipate, growth with a few more kids. Saying this lease number, this 3.3 million number, is the number from your lease. Your transportation contractors are grossed up, assuming we get another bus or two. This is what your liability insurance will be. And then again, as we get more kids and the food, so the food budget does match the USDA funding, so it's a 1-to-1. And then general supplies and supply assets, depending on what the students need or the new kids we get.
So on the transportation, did you get information from Lisa? Because I know we have to refresh the buses, right? When they hit a certain age or mileage, we need to put a new bus in there. Has that all been calculated in here? Because I know that gets tricky sometimes.
It has, so that should be, yeah, so it just depends on if Herrera or whatever vendor we use, it buys a new bus, and then what happens is PED is supposed to help fund that bus.
Correct.
And so that budget, so if that happens, the revenue and the expenditures will change. But this is based on us essentially having similar revenue and similar, and the other thing is, yeah. So it's based on whatever our current transportation vendor told PED, because that is how they funded us. And then this expense is essentially grossed up from what we have this year for like an extra bus.
Yeah, because if we do get more students, that may also have us increasing the size of the fleet. I just want to make sure we're accounting.
Well, until we're only getting 999. So that's as much as we're getting from funding for transportation. So it really does depend on what we want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that changes really don't typically come before you, and the contracts don't typically happen until after most of the enrollment is done and we know where the kids are, and we do, Alicia and Director Hughes for transportation will do the bus routes and how many kids fit where and do all that finagling and then work with PED. So I don't think we have an answer just yet, but I was just going to look and see if I could find the age of your buses to see if there are any buses to be replaced. But that's regardless, the numbers could still change because of we may need more buses, for example, or it much depends on enrollment and who's riding the bus and where they all live. But I'm looking to see if I can find out, look at the list of the bus numbers, because we went over this very much detail last year about what buses were, how old the buses were and what were coming due. So maybe I can let you know before the end of the meeting on whether we anticipate a new bus for Albuquerque. But final numbers won't be until we negotiate all that with PED and how many kids fit on the bus.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is where we are as far as funding goes. We are right now estimated to end the year at 700,000. We'll have a beginning balance. We're estimating a beginning balance around 400,000 this year. So we'll end with a fund balance of about $1 million. That is good for the size of school we have. It's not, I mean, it's not terrible, but we definitely need to work on building our reserve.
Totally.
And that's just a 4% reserve. So that's right around, like PED suggesting, we're between 3 to 5%. So we're in that ballpark. So that is what I'm suggesting, as approving a fund balance of a 4% reserve. And so here's your budget approval. The rest of these slides, I don't know why there's multiple ones. My printer must have gone crazy in my PDF. But tonight, and we'll look at the calendar first, but just so we all know, here's what our operational budget is essentially constructed of. We did put additional money for projects like libraries and art projects. They're conservative expense assumptions, I think. 150 for additional compensation for stipends and other work that's done by staff. And the enrollment is 1510. So if we get over 1510, it will be the first time in a very long time where we have enrolled more than we have projected. And I am super excited about that. Here's what all our title money is right now allocated to be spent on. And the other upside here is we are applying for additional funds like the high dosage tutoring fund. We haven't heard back if we're going to get that or not, but Lisa is working hard at applying for additional funds. And then whenever you do approve the budget tonight, you will get a 901B10 in your inbox from me tomorrow morning, so that you can sign it saying that you officially approve it, and we can submit that to PD.
All righty. All right, board members, any clarifying questions on what our budget looks like? And that's based on the 4-day week, correct?
Yes, 4-day week. Mm-hmm. Here is your salary schedule, and the big thing to notice here is it does include the new minimums. This is pretty cool, and also the minimums for the EAs and years of experience they have. And here's the calendar. So I am not the expert at this calendar. I can bring up the PED calendar. Well, I don't know. So there's different calendars here. There's, 188 days for elementary. The funding will go down. We will have to cut people.
I think for the calendar decision, there are
Yeah.
links.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go over all of these or not, Chair Molina, but just so you know, there are some calendar links further down on the calendar discussion on the agenda.
So Katie, you said that if we went to a 5-day a week, that the budget gets very, very, very tight to a point where we would have to cut staff. If we cut staff, does that also mean that per classroom numbers go up?
Yeah.
And Jake, you can chime in on these questions. So I want to make sure that we're balancing the days of the week versus what impact that has on faculty, on students, on families, and the classroom, right? Because we pride ourselves on our classroom size. So if we went to a 5-day week, what does that look like? And what does that mean overall? Not just from a budgetary piece, but what does that do to the vision and mission of Explore Academy? And Jake, Katie, you can feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about some of this conversation. So there was a couple of things that stood out to us relative to the calendar. The first one is that beyond the funding thing, right? When we looked at this, we said, well, if students are in 5 days a week for X number of weeks out of the school year, it create like, how can I explain this? So for our staff, I guess I'll start with staff actually. For our staff, when we talk about having a single term break, what that means is within that one day, the staff are expected to finalize grading all of the flavor assessments, make sure core assessments are entered, get grades finished, complete any updates and reporting out of student progress for IEPs, and plan and prepare for the following day, which will be the start of the very next term, which we ask kind of a lot of our teachers on flavor first day to say, take off with some creativity and get your rooms ready and things. That all puts that into one day. And what we were used to, like this school year, is we always had a term break day where teachers were allowed to get their logistical work done and then a day of professional development. And it's something that we pride ourselves in, is consistent professional development. So when we looked at the calendars and we said, can we take out a term break? We realized that creates a major stress factor on the quality of what teachers are able to do at the start of the next term, and a stress factor on that in terms of workload. For students, what we recognize is that, as an example, let's take the extreme other of this, which was that 205-day with 2 term break days in there. It provided the 2 term break days, but they are chugging along on a calendar like this, where they're going essentially mid-July into the first week of June, and originally with the 1 term break day, like they're just pounding through And for us, we felt like for students, there is no downtime, there's no breathing time in there. And honestly, one thing that, as an educator, we talk about is that a lot of learning happens in the reflection of what's been done. So when we talked about the 4-day and we said, so what could be the highlights of this? As an example, we said, well, first of all, when you have students that get that 5th day of the week where they're at home, it doesn't mean, hopefully it doesn't mean that nothing is happening, that there are things that both the school can talk about in terms of what kids can do without having to worry about being in a school day. It's not as stressful as having that 5th day. If they have some things that they can do while they're at home or while they're at school, it still helps to bridge the gap, but especially for things like, I'm an English teacher. We talked about on a 5th day, kids being able to, books that we can assign. A criticism we've had from parents since I've been an English teacher at the school was always, we don't assign enough books. But the reality was that the 22-day terms, to compact that into 4 weeks and 2 days, plus midterms, plus testing, plus flavor assessment, demonstrations, there was no time for kids to do reading. Music programs had similar struggles, foreign language programs had similar struggles. Like a lot of our programs lacked time, and putting it on a 4-day week for a 20-day term, and they now have 5 weeks in a term instead of 4 weeks in a term, and there's just time built in. When we looked at the 21-day terms here, there were, again, some things that stood out to us from parent feedback. So looking at the August one, the term break falls on the 26th of August, which is a Tuesday. So the term breaks, again, some of the comments we'd received as a school is that term breaks do become a challenge for parents because you have to sort of suddenly find childcare in the middle of a week, and it's kind of random when it's placed. Whereas on the 20-day term, it sort of always lands on the Friday. We have teachers back the 17th of July, students starting the 21st. And the other one, the students start the 22nd, so it's not significantly longer, but the teachers actually start the 21st. And then our kinder through 5th grade, essentially whatever you see in pink on these calendars, the bright pink, like the magenta, I guess, or I don't know, there's probably a better name for that color. I'm not an art teacher, I'm sorry. Whatever the color is in the 17th and 18th, that color, you add 5 days with that, and that's the professional development, and our K-5 and students would start following that. So given this calendar, 17th and 18th staff are in session. Our K-5 staff would be in professional development the 21st to the 24th on top of the 17th and 18th. Students would start the 28th of July. So it plays out a little bit similarly to the 20-day term that we have. If you could scroll down a little bit on the other thing about this calendar, which we knew going into it, is just the placement of where holidays land. Just makes it challenging. So we, when we looked at, for instance, where the winter holiday lands on the 25th, it makes us stop kind of early in December because you're stopping on the 18th of December on that 4-day week. Whereas if the 25th was on, Tuesday or something, you would go all the way up like the 20th of December. You'd add days at the end of the semester as opposed to having to pack them on the beginning. And the same thing happens down in May and kind of across the calendar. Something that was, we've been through so many discussions, and they just passed as an example when we submitted this. I'm sorry, if you can pull up November. I'm sorry, I'm having to scroll around, but like November 4th, we have to give off because it's an election day. And the state passed that they said election days must be off on the calendar. However, there are no requirements to have any other holiday, federal or otherwise, off on the calendar. So they could be in class on Martin Luther King Day. They could be in class on President's Day. Like the state essentially flipped what they gave a holiday that we never had to offer off before and chose to by a preference in the past. They said that's now mandatory, and all the mandatory holidays are now optional holidays. So we have played around with this a lot, but the biggest challenge for us, just in terms of holistically how we want to approach it for students, is as was brought up earlier, we want to maximize class time. We want to maximize minutes with kids that we can have, and then we want to plan so that those Fridays, there was a question asked in there about doing research on the programs for 4-day a week, and it's true what they're sharing, right? The 4-day school week, a lot of the research points to that schools aren't having great success with that. But what I have been finding, and again, there is a lot of research out there. So on top of all the things that we do, we're sort of digging into some of that literature as well. But a lot of that has to do with, number one, the 4-day week is typically adopted by rural schools, which tend to have lower performance anyway, where kids are using Fridays to either work part-time jobs or those kinds of things. The NWEA's report indicated that the biggest factor on whether a 4-day week is successful for kids or not is the model of the school. Because yeah, you're right. If it's 3 days of kids playing video games, it's not great. But if there are things that we sort of build into the expectations that kids are doing some things on Friday to keep activities up, there's some kind of practice component in what we sort of are looking for them to complete. And then what we can provide, which I'd like to share out in my section to talk about what we've dug into for our Friday options for that. That's in my report out. 21-day term versus 20-day term, really, it was not as popular as a 20-day term as you saw on the votes. I think it had to do with start date in July versus start date and end date in June, and what those look like. And then kind of those, you have Fridays where on the 20-day, every term ends on a Thursday, which means Friday is the term break day, it's already there. Whereas this one kind of sporadically tosses term breaks around just because of where they have to land to get the 21st day in. I hope that helps. Does that give some insight into?
It does. And could I ask you to bring that Friday options exploration into this? Because I think that's a really important part for us to understand is what would a Friday look like on a 4-day week?
So we've had a couple of things, once we knew that there was a possibility for this. So just to put the timeline in there for the board, I had seen Katie's email that said something to the effect of, I know you just got your 910B5 yesterday, but I need your budget today. And the 910B5 is the thing that they need to build the budget. I think that's accurate. And it was, but I need it today. And so
that wasn't my email. That was from PED.
Yeah, well, it was from PED to you, but I in the milieu of conversation. And so we're like, so what is typically a sort of an arduous process of building out a budget, we were given like essentially 24 hours between when we got the document we needed to build it and when it was expected to be due. So we had sort of that all of a sudden, hold up, we have a problem budgetarily. So we pulled that meeting together that Monday morning, and we were able to talk through what the budget would look like. And it was in that meeting that Katie brought up the 4-day school week is a viable option at this point, and it has a multiplier that fixes budgetary issues. So by the time parents heard about it Wednesday, we hadn't had time really to dig into details. And by the time we got to that parent meeting where we wanted parents to have some input on this and to give them some time to look at the data, to look at the numbers, because we do value, I mean, the speakers tonight, like the questions they've offered, I'll just say, like, great questions, like Lisa's right on there, right? In the sense that, like, can we make sure that kids are getting maximized education? I completely agree with that. I think actually, Amanda's question about ELL students, how do we make sure we support them? Absolutely. I think all those are accurate. So when we were looking at Fridays, we said, well, if kids are on campus Fridays, we can't have that just be, we're going to, as opposed to playing the video games at home and playing the video games at the school. They need some downtime, but they also need some other things. So we reached out. So we've had a handful of conversations at this point. Girl Scouts, which we were interested in pulling in for Thursday, have said they have Friday programming. We have a meeting that we are scheduling to meet with them. We brought one of our parents in to join us for a meeting with the Rio Grande Educational Collaborative. And something that they mentioned that they wanted to make sure their terminology used correctly was they said, we are not a recreational program, we are an academic program. So as an example, they would engage our after school programming. They would take that, if we wanted to go that route, they would supplant the YMCA programming. They have, because they are certified through the state, any parent who is interested in it, there is assistance that I think she said 80% of the families that work with them pay nothing to access this program, but they have trained staff on site that do homework completion with kids to make sure they get through their homework. They feed them. They offer programming on top of that, where they do some academic tutoring that they do with kids, and they build out lesson plans, all as a part of that's just what they do for their funding. We talked about they like to sometimes hire, for instance, our EAs, our level 3 EAs. They would be interested in hiring them as a part of their team for after school program. And then we said, so what do Fridays look like? They are a part-time program only. However, when we spoke to them on the 8th of May, they said in the last week they had meetings with 4 different charter schools that are all facing the same thing. That I mentioned there are 17 on that list I saw of charter schools facing this kinds of budget cuts. And at least 4 of them have reached out to say, we need something for Fridays because it looks like we're heading that route as well. So they are in talks with the state right now. They are certified to be able to offer after-school programming and half-day academic support services on Friday. And they said we can service 100% of the kids who want to attend and be a part of this. And it can be 100% paid for. And it can be, right? So they sort of like, as they spoke, like it got better and better and better of what they're doing because they're seeing a need and they are working diligently to make those demands met. They have some limitations because to get that kind of certification where funding for the state supports the cost of the program so that parents can apply and they get it for free, they said that funding is only available if they meet specific criteria. So Friday, for instance, they said we might be able to go 8 to 12, but they are in talks with the state to say there is a bigger need here than you may have anticipated, and we would like to ensure that funding is available for parents who would like to do all day with us on Friday. And so they said our answer now is 8 to 12 on Friday or an afternoon into evening on Friday. They said, but that's the answer now. Let us have our opportunity to talk to the state and see if we can offer a full day on Friday. The parent who was with us, I believe that their children attend the YMCA. That's why they were invited. And their feedback after like this sounds not only exactly what we're looking for, but we found out in that meeting that that is what Explore Academy Rio Rancho uses for their after school program. And they have had great success integrating into the model of the school because they are familiar with how our K-5 programming works. They can work with students all the way up to the age of 13. So they would be able to essentially cover our K through 7th grade. And we would have one site with the 2 campuses. One site would be the primary service site. The other would be a secondary service site that is also serviced through those providers. So, and their ratio, they said they do a 15 to 1 or lower ratio, especially on the homework completion. But in addition to that, we applied for a grant that we were looking at anyway. It's referred to as high dosage tutoring grant. And that one provides funding to reduce the 15 to 1 ratio down to a 4 to 1 ratio. So it pays stipends and or salaries to allow staff, level 3 EAs, tutors. We actually asked the question that they hadn't been asked before at Rio Grande Educational Collaborative. I said, well, if you don't have a non-competition clause, if you've got a team of people that, let's say, take the first half day of Friday, can they independently contract with the school to take the second half of the day Friday? So there's a continuum of services and training. And she said, actually, absolutely. They don't have a competition clause. So all of that is in discussion right now because what we want to ensure is that the parents who are saying, I don't want kids to be out of school that much, I think there's a verbiage there that we're navigating, which is an instructional day versus a day of learning. Instructional days are what the state's looking for. This is with their teachers in their schedules, following their bell schedule, power schools, grading, etc. Then there's what we could be doing after school and Fridays to supplement the learning, enhance it, provide academic support for kids, tutoring services, homework assistance. And like I said, the after school program, they feed the kids, so they even have their own food program that comes through there. We're excited about that. But on top of that, so I've got to add a little more to that. They also sort of, I don't want to say subcontract because that sounds far too like business model from what I'm used to, but that's essentially what they do with 4 other institutions to bring in other programming for kids. So as an example, they said for kids wanting to expand, or parents wanting their kids to learn Spanish language, they team with Institut de Cervantes to have them come in and do Spanish language instruction. They have a program, it's Lemonade something, and I'm going to forget the other half of it, but one of our staff members had already heard of it, but it's essentially an early entrepreneurial educational program. And I think 2 weekends ago, they had their big thing in Old Town where all the schools that participate in that. Kids had lemonade stands up and around. They learned about business and how to sell. So it's learning that's outside the traditional norms of what is happening in the classroom that supplements that. Like I mentioned, we talked about reaching out to Girl Scouts because they said they would love to support with some programming, some sort of hands-on learning, experiential learning programs for Fridays for our younger kids. And one of our parents also happens to be employed with the PED, and she handed Julie Hill, who is the Dean of Students at our K-5 campus, handed her a paper with her contact info and said, please contact me because part of my work at the PED is to do exactly the thing that you're searching for, which is to connect schools that have a need for after school and Friday services to programming that can support them. And I've got a meeting scheduled with her on Thursday evening of this week. So coming up in 2 days, so we can start looking at those services. So I think in general, what I wanted to express this evening as part of what I was sharing out is relevant to this calendar. I don't want for the participants that are here watching, I don't want there to be this assumption that the school felt we can find an alternative to what we've been doing in our calendar that gets the budgetary needs that we have met, and then wash our hands as if we don't recognize that parents have jobs and careers and are concerned about their children's academics. I have not worked at a school or have spoken to someone who works at a school that uses the amount of data that Explore Academy uses. Between survey data with parents, students, testing data, classroom data, achievement data, we have a handbook of how to access as administrators the data that we just do internally because we want to ensure that our program works. And we want to apply that same level of care and detail to whatever it is we're going to do to add to this. And I'll sort of finish with this, and then you can ask questions at members of the board if you'd like. But when we were looking a year ago at Explore Horizons, one thing that was apparent to us is that learning is not always in the classroom. And we had some kids that were gaining some incredible learning experiences that happened outside the traditional classroom on top of what they were getting that was in the traditional classroom. And we wanted to find a way to bring that in to say, I've taught in my classes as an English teacher, we had taken a look at, movements within literature, like the Renaissance movement as an example. And we talked about the literary translation of that literature into artwork of the Renaissance. And I did my best to project great high quality images of Renaissance art, but we have had students in Italy and France looking at it live. And there is a value to that we said we want to embrace that means something too. We had a young man this last year whose grandfather took him to Papua New Guinea for several weeks because he just had this opportunity to do it. And the social studies teachers immediately said, man, we teach guns, germs, and steel, which actually starts in Papua New Guinea. We've never had a kid actually go there and get to see the thing live that they've only read about in books. And we said, so what if so travel was actually the first thing we looked at. And then we said, but what could we do beyond that? Parents were looking for dual credit for kids. They were and a lot of the things that we looked at were high school credit oriented, which meant that it did seem to be very shifted and geared towards what was happening at Galton, and not even all of Galton, really just kids in 8th through 12th grade at Galton. But I think what this represents is, again, embracing the idea that there can be great learning happening, that we don't just have kids playing 3 video games 3 days a weekend, but there can be great learning happening, and we can partner with programs that help us to do it, that give that opportunity. And these programs are actually much more geared towards younger kids. I think our parents, I assume, right, our parents of our 14 through 18-year-olds are much more comfortable probably saying, well, if you're home on Friday, take care of chores, do what you need to do. They go off to work. But our parents of our younger kids are looking for more opportunities for their students. And if we could provide that to them, and we could provide that same kind of alternative way to be learning and integrated into what we do, we really actually saw an opportunity here that we can integrate some of that into what these kids are doing on their after schools and on their Fridays. So that was all a part of the conversation that we've been having. We have a lot of work ahead of us. I won't shy away at all from people who say, but what about? Because those questions are valuable, right? I think, what do we do about kids? And I just think that all the information that we've shared with parents, it's all new enough, and it takes time to be able to schedule meetings where you can meet with people from other organizations and talk about what they can do and vet their program. And those things just take time, but that is what that's what from now until probably end of June we'll be doing. So contracts are signed, people are getting enrolled in courses. I think everyone who attended the meeting with Rio Grande Educational Collaborative was very excited for it, and I'd like to move on them sooner rather than later. But yeah, that's kind of the work we've been doing to ensure that it's not just fulfilling a financial need, but as a school, we're embracing the opportunities that it could provide.
Thank you, Jake. Let me take a moment to address the folks in the attendees gallery. I see a hand being raised over and over and over. This is not the time for public comment. That'll be later on this evening. So I'm going to ask that you stop doing that. It's rather distracting. So please lower your hand. We will take public comment when it's appropriate on the agenda. Thank you very much. All right. All right, everybody. We've got the first thing we need to vote on is which calendar we need to address. And then that will then drive the budget and teacher. The salary schedules really aren't dictated by us. For the vote is really a formality, right? We can't
Yeah.
deny it. So I thought of a bunch of different ways to do this. And I think what I'm going to do is move to approve the 4-day calendar at, and if I get this wrong, somebody correct me, at the 20-day. Is that correct? 20-day? Is that the best scenario?
I mean, I think that's up to the board to look at. I think if the 20-day was the one that had the most votes on its behalf. I think that was the one that was most clear as a 5 on the score. The 21-day was also a strong contender. It did have many more who said for them, it was a 1 and absolutely not 21 days. So the voting results listed 21-day and 20-day as the two preferences over any of the 5-day options.
Right.
They had the most support for it was the 20-day.
Okay.
And,
So
and
I'm
I
going to
just
make
want
the
to make
motion
sure
for
that the 20-day has a total of 175 days, right?
Sure. So while you do that, I'm going to move to approve that. We don't have to, when we vote on it, we can kill it, right? But just to get the conversation started from a Robert's Rules of Order standpoint, I'm going to move to approve the 4-day week, 20-day calendar as presented. And once we have a motion, then we can open it up to talk about any calendar we wish.
I'll second.
Thanks, Martha. All right, it has been properly seconded. All right. So hopefully the board has had an opportunity. We just got slammed with information today. The survey results from the community. I will say that I was hoping to see more involvement from the community. But we got what we got. A gross majority, or at least a majority of the pie that I saw were families/parents, and then it was faculty, students, and so on and so forth. I was pleased to see the student involvement. I love the fact that students actually participate in the survey. That was brilliant, and I would have loved to have seen that number have been higher.
And if I can give you a number just real quick, I apologize.
Sure,
When I
sure.
send emails out, like when I sent the survey out to be voted on, it goes to over 3,100 email addresses in our school messenger. So we really did try to blanket all of the existing population of the school with opportunities for them to do it. And I sent the survey out utilizing that service. So we make sure to reach all the parents.
And because I'm on a different computer than where I check my EA email on right now, can you tell us what the overall sample size was? So you said it went out to 3,100 emails. How many actually, what was the total number who responded? Like I said, it's on a different computer. I can't bring it up on this one.
404, 403. We had
403.
just over 400 responses to the calendar survey itself. So there were two surveys that went out. One was essentially the support the sort of expanding opportunities for the school survey, and then people who selected yes that they were members of the community took them to the calendar survey. That survey alone had 400 and some responses to it, like 405, something like that.
Very good. That's actually a pretty okay response rate for a survey. 25% is almost unicorn status. And we obviously didn't hit that with 400 out of 31. In that 3,100, Jake, were potential families included in that? So folks who went through the lottery process and have applied, were they part of that as well?
It's hard to say because essentially, because the survey is anonymous, it's the only indicator as to who answered it was whether or not they had, on the first survey, marked yes, they're a part of the community, and on the second survey said, what aspect of the community you represent. So I imagine that potentially there were some who are not members of it yet, but maybe had been accepted and were a part of
But the survey was sent out to to a larger community than just our current families, correct?
Because it was, yes, I sent the information for both surveys out to our enrollment team, who got those out to anyone who has filled out and has been working on an application to the school.
Okay.
And one was embedded in the other. So hopefully they all got that. And as a statistician, you might know this number better than I do, but I do think in stats it gets to a point where adding more responses to it doesn't necessarily curve the outcome more significantly than a certain chunk. But I do think 400 and some people it's pretty well represented. I mean, it's 3,000 emails. That's about 2 for every student, a little over 2 for every student that attends the school.
Okay. I saw the hand raising flashing again. Please refrain from doing that. We will take public comment when it comes up in the agenda. Please refrain from doing the hand raising. Thank you very much. All right. Very good. Aaron, Martha, Heather, you will all have students at different grade levels. I think Martha and Heather have students at the mid-high. Is that correct? And Aaron has students at the elementary level. What questions from a parental, and I think you've seen some letters that have come to the board over the last 24 hours. What questions might you have with regards to the 4-week versus 5-week, 20-day versus 21-day calendars? Because these impact you and your fellow parents more than it does a Dottie or me. Not that Dottie and I don't have anything to say, but we don't have any students at the school right now. So I'd really like to open it up to you three to really dig into our options, please.
Waiting for Heather to go.
I'm gathering my thoughts.
I think she's waiting for me, or no, she's gathering her thoughts.
I gave the choice to my kids when Mr. Colander, when you sent the schedule out, we talked about it as a family. We let our kids give their input. And they all in the end actually do, out of all of the options, support the 4-day a week with 20-day terms. They liked that option the best out of all of them. It was a lot of information for them and for us as parents to assimilate and to understand why the changes were taking place. But I think we all do now as a family, and our kids are looking, they like Explore, they want to stay there. The one question I have, and it really isn't for my own kids, but to address, I think it was Miss Greaves' comment about how or if there will be changes in how the ELS students will be supported with the calendar changes.
I'll add one comment to that, as we are actually looking to, so Dr. Taylor has been our ELL individual over at the mid-high, which is where a majority of the students are who fall under that qualification. And we have another teacher who is certified to do that we're looking to have her take on another group of ELL students. And I'm sure that they're also thinking the same thing. I mean, their attention to that population, I think, is significant, but it's for sure something I think that we can ask them and say, how do we ensure that ELL students are supported? And now that we'll have 2 teachers helping to support that at the mid-high, and Danny Corbin, who helps support that at our elementary, I think the 3 of them can probably coordinate it with Melissa Hernandez, who is our director, the director of assessment and of ELL support. So she'll be able to assist as well. But I think that's a great question.
Aaron, did you have anything?
Yeah, and maybe I'm just overthinking this a little too much, but could someone walk me through, if we were to stay with the same schedule, 5-day weeks, we don't have a crystal ball, but I'm just curious, what does that do from a budgetary concern? Like, because obviously it seems like teachers would need to be reduced, and so our class sizes would go up.
So, Jake, I know I updated that Google Doc that you had. Do you have that handy? The one that shows like what each of the different day scenarios look like?
Yeah, I'll pull that up just one second.
Okay. I'm gonna let when Jake shared that, because we did do that analysis and you can see what it looked like.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that around. I had mentioned that earlier that I'd like to see what an Explore Academy looks like with the keeping things status quo, so to speak, with the exception that the budget would be impacted by a sizable amount of money. So yes, please.
And I can share screens if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, and this document was one that was shared as a part of the collection of information that was given to parents. And that email with the survey had this documented as well, so they could, they could take a look at it. So what we were seeing is if the status quo was columns E through G, so that's 188, sorry, 197, H through J, the original proposed calendar for the school that got us the initial shock value, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Kate, I think it was the 188.
That's true. Yes. Yep.
And that is the one where at 1,600 students where class sizes would need to be bigger. We still would have had to, sorry, let me expand this row
So
down.
we're on 188 days right now.
No, we're at 197.
We're
at 197.
Proposed for next year was at the 188. So that was, I mean, you see what the net operating was as a result of that. Even at 1,600 kids, we were talking budget cuts and staffing cuts. 197 is the status quo. What happened was that, the first thing is that we have that 600K reserve that is part of the, that's currently part of the bond covenant that we have to have there. And so in order to maintain the 600K reserve and have this kind of net operating in column H, we would have to cut, at 1,510, I think is what was presented this evening for the projected budget, 1,510 students. At 1,550, that's 5 teachers that we have to cut. We already did reduce hiring for this coming year. And there is no, like when we talk about reducing, cutting, increasing number of hires and things, that's almost exclusively looking at what's happening at our mid-high. Our K-5 is it's fully enrolled. We've got a significant wait list for our K-5 group. We can't, just in terms of numbers, we can't cut teachers from there. There isn't space to do that. And so when we talk about flexibility within staffing, we're almost exclusively talking about our mid-high, because our K-5 is, the building holds 420 students. We have 420 students. We have the minimum number of teachers for 420 students. So the K-5 is kind of set. So all that flexibility comes out of our mid-high. And when you're saying that if we cut 3 teachers out, it leaves us with a net operating of 367,000. But we have to and I don't know, Katie, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think that number includes stipends that we paid for our teachers who are department chairs, the stipends we get for coaches, because we started paying coaches this year. We want to make sure coaches are paid. That's not factored into there. If there is a facilities issue where we need to have an emergency fund sitting around, then that gets depleted pretty quickly. And I do believe, as was mentioned earlier this evening, there is a suggestion of having around a 5% budget that is your net operating at the end. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head of what kind of, but that would be like a 0.5% on there, something like that, 0.7%. So it's not even, I don't think it's even a 1%, or it's 2%. It's something like that. It's, in other words, it's far below what the recommendation is, because schools do have an ebb and flow of things that happen that we have to have money in reserve to be able to address. So, we have teachers that by October 1st might increase their license level, and they'll go from a $65,000 a year teacher to a $75,000 a year teacher. We want to see those kinds of things happening. That's not factored into that projection. And with the new micro-credentialing process, we have more and more teachers that are upping their license level. And so I actually think from 2 years ago to this year, we saw a significant increase in what we're spending on our salaries, because we are hiring more highly qualified teachers. We do have many more level 2, level 3 teachers than level 1 teachers. And a lot of our teachers, like even at the K-5, are working on programs of instruction to move into being able to increase their licensure level. And none of those things are factored in here. So, you add 3 teachers that increase their license level, that's an extra 30,000 plus benefits and things in there. So it is a big chunk that happens with small things. So although it is an option, and if the board, for instance, wanted to say, let's stick to a 5-day week, let's stick to 197 calendar days, if that's what we're needing to do in order to make sure we have that 600K reserve in our budget to meet the bond covenant, then we would say, well, we're going to have to get to 1,600 kids. Class sizes will be a little bit bigger because that does not give us the money to increase our staffing to accommodate for those numbers of students. We actually have to cut staff to accommodate for that number of students, but that it does get us into a net positive. And then the other option for the 5-day weeks were the 205 instructional days. I did not include, this was included in what was sent to parents. It was not on the presentation I gave that evening because I can't fathom asking our teachers to increase 10 days under their contract without paying them. So I didn't present this to our staff. I didn't present this to parents in the night of the presentation, but it was on the spreadsheet. So I really only presented this option, which was a 5-day school week with one term break day at 205 days. It does give us a pseudo comparable net operating at the 1,600 students. But that calendar, and I was not shy in expressing the fact that to me that calendar, the question asked of Chair Molina was, how does this affect students and staff? That calendar is kind of brutal. So
I have one other question, if that's okay. And Katie and Jake, this may be a question for both of you. Do you have any indication of how many families may either withdraw their students from Explore, or how many incoming students may decide not to come with the calendar change? And do we have an indication if that will negatively impact the budget? If we have a large number that say, no, this isn't what we want.
yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's one of the reasons why we didn't on our survey results, which I can, let me stop sharing this, and I'd like to put the survey results up there because that is something I can actually point to as to why we structured it that way.
While Jake does that, I'm becoming impatient with the hand raising activity. It is distracting on the screen. Ms. Greaves, I'm going to ask you very politely to please refrain from doing that. We are not in a position to take any public questions or comments at this time. That is later on in the agenda. I'm going to ask you very nicely, please stop. Thank you.
Underscore that if I may, public participation at these board meetings is limited to public comment. There isn't an exchange during the meeting. This is the board's time to deliberate and discuss.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. All right, Jake, share your screen.
All right. And I apologize. I did put something in the chat, and I'll clarify that I did actually have somebody reach out to say on the surveys themselves that a single response might represent multiple stakeholders. She mentioned that her survey response represented 6 stakeholders in total. So we wouldn't necessarily anticipate seeing 1,300 responses because we don't need one for each student. I just want to it was something I put in the chat. I apologize. And I'll refrain from posting it there further. But in this particular screen, in this survey result, we did a 1 to 5 scale because we wanted to put it on the 1 meant not at all. I don't want this at all. A 5 meant I totally want this. And then, allowed us to get some sense in between. Because as an example, this first option, which was the 4-day school week, 175 instructional days with the calendar at a 21-day term. What I see from this one, which is sort of a roundabout answer to your question, anybody who's in the 4 and 5, they would probably adjust if they needed to. To me, anyone who's in the 1 or 2 probably would say that might be a game changer for them. That might be a deal breaker if we go that route. People in the 3, I kind of read that to mean they could go either way. It might either depend how we approach the calendar moving forward, like what do we do with those Fridays? That might be the decision maker for them. Or they might have just said, I'm okay if we go with this. I'm not excited, but I'm also not like turned off by it. I'm okay here. On the 4-day
Jake,
school.
could you zoom in a little bit?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that work? Yep.
Yep.
So you can see that we had 99 respondents that said that the 4-day school week with 175 instructional days at a 21-day term. 99 of our respondents said, no way. And I'm sorry, it was 408 responses total. So there's the number for you. So a quarter of the respondents said that that's a deal breaker for them. Of the ones who said with the 4-day, 20-day term, 58 or 14%, to me, it tells me that that's a deal breaker for them, for those respondents. It's hard to gauge whether that's a single respondent with multiple children in the home, and that would be a harder hit um, on the budget and on the enrollment otherwise. But to me, it also says we have 300 almost even, or 300 even, that say, for me, I'm fine with it. I either really like it or I like it in there. And then an additional 24 down here where they're not all the way at a 1, but also kind of in that range. So that's tough. That represents a real challenge. When we go, however, to what we have this year, which is 197 instructional days, 5-day week but only down to 1 term break each day, so that we're not starting so early in July. It says day 1 for students would be July 31st, which is what we were sort of anticipating, and May 27th would be the end. We had half of the respondents that said that's a deal breaker for them, and if you add the 62% in there, that's a big chunk. That's almost 2/3 of our family saying this is a deal breaker, and only 50 of our family said this is what they would prefer and like. And similarly, for the 205 instructional days, it gets worse, relevant to the number who say that's a deal breaker for them. And this is a 5-day week with 1 term break day in between. And then the last one represented a 5-day week with 2 term break days in between. And I think that was the worst of all options. Everyone said that just sounds not great because it's a really early start date, really late end date. So that sort of shares out where we saw with the parents. But that question of, do we know how many we'd lose? I don't, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to scale it as opposed to saying, do you support it, yes or no? Because I figured there may be some families that even if this one, let's take the one that had the most ones, even if this one was shifted the other direction, there may be some families in there that say, well, I don't love it, but I can live with it. And they prefer to stay at the school and prefer to stay in the model. And they're like, it's not my favorite thing on the planet, but I'm okay with this. And moving forward, we wanted to capture their perceptions as well. And we wanted to know the people as opposed to just no, because I don't prefer it versus I really, really don't want this. So that was our rationale for doing a 1 to 5 scale as opposed to just a yes or no, do you support scale. Is there anything else on these survey results that you all would like me to scroll past to show you?
No, but thank you for that clarification that 1 vote may represent several families on both ends of the spectrum, right? Our 1s could have been a family of 3 students, and our 4s and 5s could have been a family of 2 or 3 students, right?
So this one represents our highest desired out of the survey results. What this means for the 1s and 2s. Like, I hope that over the course that they're saying we absolutely don't want this could be a deal breaker for us. I hope that over the course of the conversation with the parents, what's shared out this evening, conversations with their kids' teachers, with other parents, I hope that we can shift some of those 1s and 2s to say, I would love if we could shift them even to 2s or 3s to say, I don't necessarily love it because I'm concerned about what we could be losing by going this route, but that they are willing to say, but I'm sticking with it because I think that, I hope to convince some of those who are on that end, on the 1-2 side of it, that it wasn't a willy-nilly decision. We are not saying that we are okay if academics slip because we wanted to make sure our budget worked. Not that at all. We wanted to make sure the budget worked so that we can provide the kind of interventions and supports necessary to make sure that our kids are doing well. We've always dreamed of being able to offer more, and we get requests all the time for more math interventionists, more support and tutoring, more one-on-one time. And it is always, as you saw at the end of this fiscal year, you've seen what our budget looks like. It's always been a dream of ours that we've just never been able to move towards, to say, for the kids that really need targeted support, how do we make sure that we help them adequately? And this opens up a little room for us to be able to do that, and hopefully they'll stick with us.
It seems as though Friday has a great potential to address those kids that have extra needs that may need extra attention. Is that your approach with the Friday?
Yeah, I think it was twofold for us. The first one is to ensure that for families where there's an undue hardship placed on them to try to find some kind of childcare on Fridays, that need is addressed, to say that our school is open, doors are open, we will be here, and you'll have a place to send your kids. If they're not looking necessarily for anything academic, they're like, I really just need them to be around some trusted adults where they can maybe do some activities. That's one need. The other is originally why we had looked at applying for that high dosage tutoring grant, is to say, what can we provide for kids in a more targeted way that gets them in smaller groups as opposed to full class sizes, and with interventionists that are there really just to address the needs that they have.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Miss Martha?
Thank you. Well, I mean, I have a senior, so of course she's a little more, I'll have a senior, so she's a little more independent. But as a former teacher, my concern was for the teachers, so the 205 days, especially they're not getting paid. That was kind of a deal breaker for, for me. And then also the elementary, kiddos. But, I feel like I have faith that we're gonna address those issues. So that's my 2 cents. So thanks for all of the work that everybody put into this. I mean, I can tell that a lot of thought went in during a short period of time, and I know there's still a lot more work to do, but I'm excited to see what is gonna, be done with this curveball that's been thrown at us. And that's it.
Thank you. I've played this through my head a few times. I had 3 children, they're all grown now, and I played in my head what it would look like if they had a Friday to do homework catch up or get that extra tutoring, or I was a musician in high school, to have a Friday where I could practice with my peers and not have to worry about classes ending and getting in the way and all of that jazz. And it seems like a really, really neat opportunity that fits our model, right? Our model is not regular. We're not a traditional school, which is one of our biggest attractive points to families and students is we're not every other school out there. And I think as a father, when I and all 3 of my kids struggled with some subject or another, is back in that day, we were taking either weekend time or evening time to get them the extra tutoring at an extra expense. And it got into the way of their extracurricular activities and their sports and whatnot, where this is during the school day, during that normal day, that they get that special help and it doesn't impact their afternoon and evenings, right? To get that, it's not an added cost to the parents. It to me, it sounds really quite excellent. And then for those students who are excelling, to have other opportunities to do other things, right? The Girl Scouts or kids that are involved in their Eagle Scout project can do some of that on a Friday when resources are available. I can't tell you how many times I've had to take a day off of work just to get things done during the week because I get to work so early and I leave work so late. I can't get to things in the community that are only open from 8 to 5, right? So when I look at having a Friday available for students to sort of have that, right? It's a it's a Friday where I can go get that geometry tutoring because I don't understand proofs and theorems and all of the and postulates. I can spend as much time as I want getting into that, right? And I know not every student is that motivated. I get it. But and when I think about some of our special needs students who can actually slow down on a Friday and take things at their own pace and explore I don't know, I right, because we have students with special needs and we have students who are um a year ahead in their own studies, right? And to balance all of that and have a Friday where they can be them but still in an academic setting, I think is really quite unique. Um, Ideally, would it be lovely to have what we had this year next year? Of course, I think that would be a slam dunk calendar vote, but that is not the deck that we've been dealt this year. We need to do what's best for everyone, knowing that we're not going to make everyone happy. And as much as we strive to make as many people happy as possible, here's where we are. And this is a very tired thing to say. And a lot of folks in our attendees gallery are probably going to roll their eyes when I say this, but lawmakers in Santa Fe made these decisions and a whole, including me, I will absolutely sign. I wasn't paying attention. I did not realize that that was going on up there. And I bet you a whole bunch of us on this call probably didn't realize it either. Now that we're seeing what happened, now we're having to deal with it. So, and I will absolutely, I will reach out to my PEC contact, uh, the commissioner who takes care of my area of town, and say, what were you all thinking? How did you think this was going to better the classroom and our student outcomes? I'm not sure those folks up there are paying attention because we are the 50th in the nation. Our school is a spotlight school. We can compete with schools around the country and we compete well, but that requires the right investment. And they've put us in one heck of a pickle. And this is the hand we've been dealt. This is by no means ideal at all. And I hope the folks in our attendees gallery got to see the numbers. And it's not that we're overspending or paying out lavish salaries or anything. This is the budget that we've had over and over and over year. It's just that the funds coming in have been reduced due to one multiplier, one impactful multiplier. And again, I will happily admit, I thought things were going swimmingly up in Santa Fe, and clearly we got caught off guard. Um, so I would encourage everybody. There's 54 wonderful people in our attendees gallery. Reach out to our lawmakers and say, "Do you realize what you've done?" Again, and I think Katie said this, and I'll reiterate it: the schools who needed more because they are serving such needy parts of our community absolutely should get it without a doubt. Without a doubt. And bravo and hooray that they're getting that. But I don't think there was a reason to take away from the higher performing schools. And Jake said we're not the only ones. There's 17 other schools who are high performing in the state who are dealing with this same problem. And it is fantastically unfortunate. So, and I will take my own medicine. I am going to reach out to PEC and to my senator and my representative up here in the Heights and say, what's going on? What is going on? What was the logic behind this multiplier getting changed? Because it's not serving the entire community. It's serving some of the community and a needy part of it. Thumbs up. But you left some students behind on this one. So those are my 2 cents, everybody.
Should we consider drafting something as a board to send
Oh,
to the powers that
absolutely.
be?
You
And
bet.
I even like I'm not okay with it, but I would have loved to have like a phase-in option. Meaning they change the formula, but it goes into effect next year or 2 years from now to give us some time to plan.
Right.
Just because I think a lot of our parents were caught off guard by it. All of a sudden,
Sure.
this is taking away or something that we had all signed up for is now something very different than what we had originally planned.
And
Yeah.
And then one other clarifying question just before we go to a vote here. 175 days per Mr. Colander's spreadsheet and the possible ABQ calendar. So ABQ 20 days, that's the same thing as 175.
Yeah, and so instructional days, so there's instructional days, and then, as somebody pointed out, there's days that kids are in class. So as an example, at an elementary school level, there are 10 days of professional development that can be counted as instructional days because they recognize that those things should be included as a part of it. And so when we talk about 175 days, that means there's 175 days on the calendar, including the professional development days that we're putting out there. And there are days in there that they will count assessment days or testing days as instructional days. We need to figure those out. The trick with the 4-day week is that we cannot add a 5th day anywhere on it. So if there was a day where it was a 4-day week already, but we said, well, let's do our iMesa testing or our iStation testing on Friday, and we want to count that as a day for our testing, it knocks us out of that multiplier for the 4-day a week. So we have to figure that out, or we just have to say we're not including testing as instructional days. We always have. we can just say we're not including them as testing day, as instructional days anymore. And our staff would still have 195 contract days.
And the one thing I'll say about the phasing in, they thought they were doing that, the safe harmless units, but the way they calculated it was wrong. Because if we had the same number of kids year every year, we would have gotten more units for the same number of kids to help with the funding. But since we're growing school, the enrollment generated more units. So then when they subtracted the 2 years, we didn't get as much as we should have received. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, if you want to talk about it, Aaron, I can show you the math, but like it's and that's the complaint for all these schools that are growing, is that they didn't get enough safe harmless.
I think it might be very valuable to show that math really quick, Katie.
Yeah.
And we're about to make a very sizable change to our school and our community, and I think we turn over every rock on this one.
Yeah.
And while she's that up, I'll mention that, as you were mentioning, Chair Molina, I think about one thing that we were excited for and that we would like to get going is to have a library available for our K-5 students. And that is something that not every kid has access to, which is a literacy-rich environment on their weekends, on their days out, and having things like that available, I think also say, let's make sure there's funding available to ensure projects like that help support the things that we have been wanting.
Can you
Agreed.
zoom in, Katie?
Yeah. Here's with the zooming. Okay, so what they did is they said, based on your 24-25 calendar, your at-risk units plus your membership got you to 1.41 units. The problem is, and I don't remember what our 8120 was last year. Let's say this was like based on 12,000 kids. This number here that generated more units was because it's based on like 1368. So had this been based on 12,000 kids, 1,200 kids, sorry, and had this number been based on 1,200 kids, then this would have generated more units than this, and it would have been apples to apples. But the problem is because our grade, our 6 through 12 units included growth, we are not actually getting the safe harmless benefit that we should, because they're saying that those extra kids, the units those kids are generating, are filling the at-risk unit gap. And so when you subtract the two, but different enrollment numbers, we're only getting 0.939 safe harmless units, which equates to $737.
Do some of our students have below 1 unit equivalent?
No, they all are 1 or higher. But it has to do with this number up here.
And so, yeah, so what's our total enrollment?
So that is what this is based on for your primary programmatic amount. So we're getting over $12 million for 1,363 kids. We're also getting a small amount for growth. Well, it's not small, but we're getting an amount for growth. It's enrollment growth. So this was last year's 40th day, and this is this year's, what we're projecting that 40th day. So we're getting some units for that, for the enrollment growth too. But because the units that are being generated here are based, are based on 1,363, and the prior year was based on, I don't know, I don't have that 910B5 pulled up. It was less. It was like 150 kids less. We're getting punished essentially for growing, because there's They're not giving us the full amount for the units. And each kid is worth this amount of unit. I don't know if this is helpful, but here's the multiplier.
So 1,363 is the actual head count.
Yes, that is based on, that's how many kids we had on the 80th day and the 120th day. That's the average. And that's how a chunk of this is funded.
Can you go back to the original calculation?
The one at the bottom.
Yeah, because I was just trying to make sense of. Because 1,154 plus 247 is the 1,400.
So this was based on, yeah, the 24-25. So this is based on FY25. The one we just looked at is FY26. It's this here. And they're comparing year over year.
So those numbers are different, right?
Yeah, barely, but yes.
Well, like the 1,300.
Mm-hmm.
So we get
Because
to
yeah,
the
they're different because this one is based on 1,368 kids, and this one is based on 1,200 kids. Does that make sense?
Could you show me the units again?
Uh-huh. And it's not all the units. There's like a certain section of units that they include in that formula.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's my question. Because
Yeah.
I was saying, well, I see 1,700 here, but the calculation actually shows the 1,300, which I believe is a subset.
Yes. Yep, that is correct. So it's just a different, I mean, I can ask for the math. I've asked that for before and I've been told they don't have it, but they have to have it somewhere. So I can ask for the math behind your save harmless amount, but that's the problem is we're comparing 2 different fiscal years with 2 different enrollment numbers. And because you're growing, it's not in your favor.
Okay, can you show the original calculation one more time?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. So had this number been 1,154 is essentially what it should be here. Because then we would say you weren't growing at all. Then this bottom number would be significantly smaller and you would have created a lot more at risk or safe harmless units. And when you took that to the $1 million appropriation, you guys would have gotten a lot more money than $700 for safe harmless. So the reason this number is 1,316, the reason it's higher than 1,154 is because this is based on a higher enrollment number.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you for that explanation. And so are we on track for enrollment to the 1,510 based off of our budget?
I'm gonna let Jake answer that one.
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Are we on track to get to the 1,510?
Yeah, we're actually on track to, I think the last time we looked at the numbers with the current number of students who identify that they are returning, along with the students who have already completed their enrollment process, we're actually on track to 1,600 for next school year.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Martha's had her hand up for a while. I apologize.
Miss Martha.
Katie, when you say that if the two numbers would have been exactly the same, no growth, and you say the 737 would have been higher, what does higher mean? I mean, I'm sure it's not going to make a big dent, but what do you think that would look like, or based on other schools, do you know?
That's hard to tell, but I can tell you how many units you would have generated. Hold on. 6. Okay, sorry. My calculator decided to not put. Okay, so instead of having, I mean, essentially, okay, plus 1400, minus 1401. Sorry. So I think I did this real quick, but instead of this being 0.939, it would have been 163. So then that means we would have had a lot more of this $1 million appropriation. The problem is, I mean, but then they prorated the share, which again, I don't know what the math is right here. But we would have gotten significantly more. How much more? I don't know, because they only appropriated $1 million for Safe Harmless for everyone, which is not adequate. But maybe it would have been closer to like 30, 40,000, 50,000.
Okay.
It still wouldn't have been enough, but it would have been higher than $700.
Thank you. Miss Dottie.
Jake, you mentioned that we're on track to reach the 1,600 students enrolling. Are they aware of the possibility of the change to the calendar to a 4-day week? And do you anticipate that that number will go down of people interested in enrolling?
That's a good question. I had shared out the survey with, like I said, with our enrollment team, and they're the ones typically who do reach out to the parents who are applicants to it.
Okay.
And I don't want to put that on them. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but I think it's something where for our current community, we did a presentation, we put it out there and gathered feedback from them as a part of the process. And then we allowed them to vote on that. I think once there's a decision this evening, once a vote has gone through and there's a calendar that's been approved for that, I think that immediately goes out to everybody. I mean, of course, I anticipate it's going to fluctuate some decisions, and it could go either direction. There may be some families who say the 4-day school week doesn't work for me, and I'd prefer to be in a school where they have the 5-day school week. There may be other families that say that 4-day school week sure sounds cool. I think I'd like to send my kids to a school that offers that. And the one that they're currently, the one that they have been accepted to, is choosing not to go that route. And so I don't, I don't know how to anticipate that for what it will do to enrollment. I mean, if I took the overall broader community and said if our incoming families had a similar perception as the families who currently enroll the school or a similar interest in something like that, then it looks like there's a chance we would lose maybe 15% of those applicants. I mean, if I just take the same sort of numbers that aligned with how people had scored the 4-day week, that's 20%. That's 20%. So it may be that there's a 20% loss in that way, but we also may in response gain some applicants. It's hard to say. I mean, I hope and I don't want to lose any family. I don't want to lose any student. I hope people will follow this, but I also understand for families who don't see this as a possibility. And yeah, I don't know how to anticipate other than to look at how the current community voted and say we might anticipate that 20% out and do the work to bring them back, to bring others back.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion, board members? This is by far, since I've been on this board, the most difficult decision I've had to make. By far.
Raise your hand again.
Yes, Miss Martha.
Sorry, I apologize for my questions, but Jake, have the teachers been able to, have they gotten questions and been able to reassure parents either way with any of these calendars? Have you gotten that feedback from teachers, or is that not something that's really been discussed at the school level?
As to how teachers are responding to,
the parents, just, I mean, just to kind of get like a temperature for the, teachers leaving, parents leaving or teachers leaving or families leaving, or trying to, help ease the concerns about a 4-day versus, the 5-day longer year.
sure. And I actually broke out, I did get let me see if I have that information. I did share out the survey results and I broke it down by the respondent type, by teacher, and then by, see if I have that spreadsheet. I'm sorry, I wish I had that prepared. What I can say is that it's like similarly, right? We had a couple of teachers who have said that they don't feel like they don't want to do the 4-day week. In terms of how they've communicated it to families, I think the teachers, their greatest trepidation is what will be expected of them outside of the instructional days. So they're sort of saying, well, you're telling us it's a 4-day week, but are we going to be asked to come in every Friday anyway? How do you respect our time? And ultimately, if we're saying there's 175 days we're counting on the calendar as instructional days, and they have to give 20 more days from that, what does that look like? Who comes in and when, and what's anticipated about it? And I met with the principals of both campuses earlier last week, and sort of we looked through it and we said, well, really what it would turn out to is that teachers would need to sign up for 12 Fridays to be present on their campuses to help support students, or have PLC meetings, staff meetings, those kind of things. Essentially 12 days that we need to rotate staff through, because we do want to count term breaks, which although those are a Friday, they're working those days. We want to respect that. I think that's their trepidation, is that route. I'll see if I can find real quick what the results were so you can see specifically how staff voted, and separated out.
Right, and I'm gonna ask Katie a question just while you look for that. So Katie, what is your expectation when you do go up to Santa Fe? Are y'all expecting any kind of response or change, or you're just going up there to share the school's concerns or the business concerns?
So I'm not going up to Santa
Okay.
Fe. I'm putting in the data that the kind of like charter, I don't think it's a charter coalition, but these group of charter leaders
Okay.
have put together. And then what they're going to do is they're showing academic gains versus where the money left. And the majority of these 17 schools, I think all but 5 of them are spotlight schools, and including Explore. And so they're going to gather the data and then they're going to go talk to legislators. I don't know if there will be a special session where we get additional funding. I don't know if they'll make a correction at all. And I don't know if it will be next year. So I don't know what the outcome is, because PED sold this pretty hard in the, maybe not Pitt, but whoever did this analysis sold it really hard to the legislators that like it was fair and equitable. And so now we have to push back against that like mindset.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron, you had asked if we should, as a board, draft a letter and send it to Santa Fe, and absolutely. And we can work offline on that for sure. So stand by for
And
more.
I can help with any
Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kate.
I did find those results. If you'd like, Chairman Lee and I can share
Yeah.
out how our staff responded.
Please.
So when I separated out from the form responses to the staff only, that option number, so the first one, of course, was so the option number 3 was the one that is the 4-day school week with 20 days for the term. That averaged out to a 4.3, which is pretty significant over, you saw that we had, I think if I take out the first few lines, it ended up with having 88 of our staff respond to this. So that is a sizable turnout for our staff. They clearly either wanted the 4-day week as the highest, and they clearly preferred by a significant margin to have the 20-day term. And these were the scores for any of the days that were the 5-day options. Their lowest being the 5-day a week, 205 days with 1 term break day. But as you know, as this comment reveals here from this teacher, it's difficult to know how to answer these questions without knowing what each option would actually look like for students and staff. So that is their trepidation. I think by and large, our staff that voted significantly have said, yeah, we want this option. But of course, there are some who said my preference is to have the 5-day week. However, we can make that happen. And we may have some staff that go looking as a response. I hope not many. Again, I hope that part of what we do is convince those who are sort of unsure of what this would look like, to convince them that we are thoughtful in our approach to it, and we really are doing what we can to support ensuring that whatever is decided by the board, that this school leadership fully embraces and does it to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Jake. All right, fellow board members. I think we've seen all of the options. None of them are ideal. And I think I know where my vote's going to go. It's not my favorite vote, but I know where it's going to go on this one. So the motion is to approve the proposed 4-day week, 20-day per term. If I want to make sure I'm using the right vocabulary, Jake, is that right? So the 4-day a week, 20 days per term calendar, which sums up to 175 days, correct?
Yep.
That is the motion, and it has been seconded. So let's take it to a vote. Ms. Dottie, would you please perform a roll call vote to approve the 4-day a week, 20-day term, summing to 175 days, please?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Pereira,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
No.
and Dottie McKinney, no.
All right, 3 ayes and 2 noes. That motion passes. So the 4-day week with 20 days per term has passed. Phenomenally difficult decision, everyone. This is not ideal by any measure. But thank you all for your incredible amount of time and attention to detail and getting the surveys out and tabulating all of that. And as a stats guy, I did lean heavily on those surveys in respect to they were answering these surveys not knowing what that really looks like. I think the solutions that Jake and the administration have come up with to make those Fridays meaningful and beneficial are outstanding. And clearly, we're not the only spotlight school out there looking for solutions. So, so thank you all. Board, thank you so much for digesting a ton of information over the last couple of days and this evening. And hopefully we can make this change for our next school year. But there you have it, everyone. So thank you very, very much. It is 8:03. We've been at it for quite some time. I would like to propose a quick recess for folks to get refreshed before we get into the second half of our agenda. If there are no objections to that, it doesn't need a vote. I'm just asking, would everyone like to take a quick, maybe 5-minute break or
Do you
so?
want to vote real quick on the budget and the salaries?
Oh,
please?
yes,
Here.
yes, we can do that. Hang on, folks. Okay. So now that we have a calendar, the budget that was presented to us was based on the 4-day, 20-day term. So I will move to approve the school year 2026 budget as presented that supports the 4-day a week, 20-day per term, 175-day school year. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Miss Heather. Any further discussion, questions for Katie or Jake with regards to that budget, which gets us by and has us delivering the product that we promise to the best of our ability? Very good. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the school year 2026 budget as presented that covers a 4-day week, 20-day per term, 175-day school year, please?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Pereira,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Thank you all very much. I'm guessing you're going to need my signature on that tomorrow, Katie?
Yeah, I sent it just now. So
Cool.
whenever you guys get it, just sign it and then I'll turn it in the pen.
Very good. Thank you very much. And then finally, I move to approve the school year 2026 salary schedules as presented for teachers and educational assistants. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Dottie. Any further discussion? Very good. Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the school year 2026 salary schedules for teachers and educational assistants?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. Now I would like to invite everyone to a 5-minute break before we get into the administration and staff report and the balance of our agenda. So be back, everyone, in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Yep.
All right. We do have a quorum, so I say we get started. Here's Miss Heather. I will move on to item number 7, which is the administration and staff report. Mr. Colander, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we will start in terms of talking about staffing. We had, I think I mentioned last time that I believe we had hired our new K-5 principal by last time, but if I hadn't mentioned it, Jennifer Vargas is our new K-5 principal. She was able to join us for some time with the administration. I think she's going to be a great administrator. She's just sort of starting with her work, but has already sort of taken well to being able to take up some of that. Hiring is happening for our K-5 right now. That's the more hiring needs to happen at that level than at the mid-high at this point, because K-5, we want to make sure, again, all of those teaching spots are filled, and that work should be closed up by about the end of this week. So we are hoping that by the time school is done, May 23rd, that all of our staffing will be fixed. I would like to give a shout out to Barbie Murphy, who was hired to be our academic coach. So Candace Lemons, who was one of our teachers, became our academic coach and has moved up to our assistant principal position for next year. And Barbie Murphy, who is one of our middle school science teachers, has been invited to and accepted to move up to our academic coach position for next year. So we're very excited to be able to continue to see people from within the school move up and grow. And of course, that puts on us hiring. We have to replace them in their classroom positions, but so happy to keep them as members of the community still. Our enrollment update, I think I kind of shared with you guys, we are still doing great in terms of our projections. We've been offered the opportunity. There was a grant money that was given to KRQE as a media outreach. They met with our director of marketing to essentially, they've been given some money to work with charter schools to help them get some marketing out there. So we feel that marketing is also going to help and the new processes. I'll give a few more shout outs here. Leticia Fraga, the former principal of the school, who's been our director of enrollment, and Katia Pride, our director of marketing, have done a bang up job in terms of fixing and adjusting how we do that process. So we feel that when we gave, like when Aaron asked for what the enrollment updates look like, we feel that our numbers are much more sure this year than we have had in previous years, because they have tightened up the process and timelines for new families to get things submitted, as well as returning families to have indicated their intent to come back. So we are on a good pathway and trajectory. In fact, we're doing well enough to again expound on Mr. Hamilton's question. We're doing well enough that we can actually look at potentially, if we get to that 40-day count of hiring a handful more of our core teachers over at the mid-high, because our enrollment might actually warrant something to that effect. Facilities. So we did a walkthrough of the facility at Galton and at Masted to start looking for things that we need to take care of. On our campus, there are some things that we need to fix. There was some roofing issues over at our Masted campus, but is covered under the warranty. We've already met with that team and they're going to get those things fixed as we go. And then overall, just as the facility, you get 900 kids, 1,100 kids walking through the mid-high campus. Walls get banged up, things get knocked around, but we're doing that work and looking to hire a new facilities person to join John Welp, who's done a great job with grounds, but we need someone that's more focused on facilities to help Rafael Lovato and his team to be able to get that going. So interviews for that position are happening on Friday, and I'm excited for those as well. Calendar presentation and feedback. I think we've talked about the calendar thing, but I would like to discuss one other thing that I wish that I would like to be able to share out with all of you. And I closed that presentation, but let me get that presentation back open because I wanted to share some things that were told to our families that I think are a part of what we're trying to do. And I would love the board to hear that. Those who might have been present there have already heard this. And I won't belabor it too much. I know we're already late into our meeting, but I would just love to share some things that we've talked about with our community as saying this is where we want to see things go kind of down the road. So I'll skip down to that portion of that presentation we gave that evening. But as a school, kind of here's sort of where we saw opportunities for celebrations. These are things that are happening within our school and that have been happening this year. We're one of 2 schools in New Mexico on the American Exchange Project. That organization that helps fund student travel, it's fully paid for. So any student who wants to participate as a graduate of the school can participate in that. And we have Karen Cassidy, who is our exchange manager working with the school. Julie Hill at the K-5 campus has really taken up the Girl Scout Trails program, getting kids signed up for that at the K-5. We've had a number of very generous families and organizations that are providing internships to our students now. And when speaking with Nora Ellis, she said we have kids signing up pretty consistently to try to find internship opportunities that now both coincide with what they're learning in school, but also offer those opportunities for them to earn credits now because of Explore Horizons. We do have 4 travel options coming up, 3 outside of the country and 1 with Explore America inside the country. And next year will be our first year with UNM teacher residents. We have one that is going to be joining with Danae Feck, who's one of our teachers over at the K-5 campus. And she'll have a teacher resident this coming year at the elementary. And Lynn Pierre has signed up to have a teacher resident over at our mid-high. So this is a program that we collaborate with UNM to get teachers. It's sort of similar to what those who may be familiar with like a teacher, like a student teacher program. It's sort of like that, but this is much more thorough. It gives teachers more time to be in the classroom, it actually pays them to be a resident at the school. So they have a salary as teacher residents at the school and they get to learn alongside of us. And it is something that we've been interested in for a while, is to say, how do we utilize our school, that iteration of terms allow for teachers to sort of practice their teaching over and over again throughout the year, which is unique to us. And then in terms of some of the awards, as you guys know, this year, our top best of city, top 5, top 10% of best teachers in New Mexico on niche.com, as well as best charter high schools in New Mexico. Our test results are doing really well. And as of last week, we had 44. So this was presented to the families, but unchanged. We have 44 seniors that are graduating this year. 1 is joining military. 2 will be going to CNM to start. The other 41 have been accepted to 4-year universities. So that was really exciting for us to be able to see those kinds of things. But the possibilities of what we had talked about with our families, I mentioned earlier, we have quite a good waiting list for our K-5. We're looking to expand our K-5 program. The number that we had this year, sort of rounded, we had about 600 applications for really just 13 spots in our 1st through 5th grade. And we'd love to be able to see how that can expand. We are continuing to look to partner with CNM or other college and universities for on-site dual enrollment. We would love to see that happening soon. Increased options for majors to include engineering projects, the trades. These are all avenues that we are thinking about and considering as a school. And then as we talked about that expansion number, which Katie shared some of the details, that expansion typically really helps us. That hold harmless number was impacted by it, but expansion really is for us what we would like to continue to pursue, in that the increased, for us, increased student body means increased staff, which means increased course options and availability. That high intensity tutoring is something that we're working on. I'm hoping to hear back. It was a grant that was coming from the PED. And I asked our grant writer, Lisa Hughes, who is a director of grant writing and transportation, I asked her, what was the determination date? When do they actually tell you whether or not you have earned or won the grant? She said that is not actually on the application. It doesn't say when they make those determinations. So we're just gonna have to wait to find out. We're continuing to work with Karen Cassidy as our athletic director to start talking about expanded options for our athletics programs, as well as the potential for joining NMAA as opposed to being part of the charter league. And, you know, we dream of some things. We know that parents have said our bus companies have worked really well with the school in terms of us being able to coordinate routes and things, but it would be really amazing for us to start looking at how do we begin owning more of our own transportation services, and how do we continue to look at creating a school in Albuquerque that we feel is very innovative, very generational. That to us is important. And so I wanted to share that with the board, because when you sort of ask about what's happening at the school, a lot of this really creative space is where we see ourselves right now, is this ability and capacity for us to start thinking about where do we want the school to go next. We feel that we've proven year after year as a spotlight school, as a top performing school, that we're doing well. Our kids are doing really well academically. We know the calendar shift for next year will be its own challenge, but how do we not only embrace that, but continue to look for ways for the school to grow? So that was sort of the Friday's options exploration came in prior in the conversation, but that was sort of, I was planning to present that kind of together as options explorations. And then graduations. We had our 5th grade graduation that took place this week, and our upcoming graduation ceremony is next Friday. And so super proud of all of our students and the things that they've been able to achieve at our school, and continuing to look to see how we can offer not only the amazing education that we continue to offer to our families, but how do we keep looking for things that we can do down the road.
Fantastic.
Much of me talking too fast, but we're late. I did want to, some of it had been spoken of prior to that, but I did want to share with you all some of the things we've been talking about as a school.
No, fantastic. Fantastic. And I will be at graduation. Love it. Very good. Any questions for Mr. Colander, fellow board members? Really nothing to vote on there. Thank you, Jake, for sharing that. That was great. All right, let's bring Alicia to the panel so that we can go over her quarterly report. Actually, yeah, her end of year report. Correct. Hi there.
Hi.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. For the sake of it being 8:30 and everybody being here 3 hours, I'm going to hit the big points, but you guys all have this linked so you can ask me any questions. So the biggest things, I'm going to echo what Katie said. We have no idea what the idea B allocation is. So Lisa is tracking that, but for now they've not put it in there. All the applications are completed, all submitted, good to go. We jumped on the consolidated app that they're piloting this year. And that worked out really well, because from what we heard, the other application, if you went the traditional route in SharePoint, wasn't even available as of last week. So I'm glad we did the consolidated application, which was good. Lisa already made the funding tracking spreadsheets for next year kind of preemptively, and she's starting to outline kind of what we applied for, and then she'll adjust it if anything needs readjusting. We applied for the Perkins reallocation grant. I know it was included in your guys' budget that you looked at, but just the only caveat for that is it's not just 10,000 for fund money. It is for very, very specific things for the CTE program. I think sometimes, I remember I was guilty of this as a staff member at my previous district before I came into this role. I'd be like, oh, well, you have money for XYZ, but you can't pay me. Yes. That's literally exactly how the money works. Like if we get it specifically for fine arts, it has to be spent on fine arts. If we get it for this one, for example, the first things that we tried to get were risers and other things to help the fine arts program, and they denied it all and said it was too general and they had to be even more specific for our CTE program. So when you see stuff on there that is like extra money, sometimes it's really pass-through money. Like they gave us the money, we had to spend it on what they said to spend it on, and then we get reimbursed. So, but at the end of the day, we will take any money anybody's giving out. So we're happy for it. So it gives our kids supplies they wouldn't normally have. So we're excited for that. State testing's all wrapped up. Everything went really well, super high completion rates. That's mostly thanks to the site coordinators and Melissa. They're really good at what they do. So I'm grateful for them. You guys already know about the site visit and the other things that are positive. There were some changes happening in HR paperwork. So benefits in particular, NMSIA has gotten very, very picky at who is able to put in the benefits. So because Bev retired, the person that was doing the benefits paperwork, we are training the new person. But they're getting very, very picky about who does benefits paperwork. So we're training the on-site staff to have the office manager handle that and it be in close proximity and coordination with the principals. So that's a little bit of a change on bringing it a little bit more to the school site itself. Karen has worked with the admins on updating handbooks. All that is good. On to buses. One thing I want to talk about because there's two things to talk about. Number one, the spring evacuations have gone much better at different sites that we've monitored with Herrera. Much, much, much better. So we're really excited about that. They definitely stepped up and the drivers did a much better job. 20 buses is a lot of buses. I think we have more than any other charter school probably. So it was really good. That being said, we looked at the enrollment for next year, went to PED and said, hey, here's our enrollment for next year. We're going to need one more bus just based on the enrollment. And they have flat out denied that. So we are going to only have 20 buses. We are going to argue. We're going to keep arguing, but I do anticipate a wait list because even this year, some routes had a wait list because we couldn't physically fit any more children on the bus. So I'm a little bit worried about that. Going up 250 to 300 students. They basically said we have hundreds of open seats and we're like, I invited them to come to the school. I said, you should come over. You should come to our dismissal. You should get on the buses or come in the morning, get on the bus and look at the students in the seat. But they sent me the regulation for bum width. There is literally a regulation for how wide a student's bum is. I can send it to you if you ever want to see it. And we said, yes, that is further proving our point that with that width and with the fact that 85% of our riders are 6'12", we can't fit what you're saying we can fit. We sent them a diagram of a school bus with the seats to show that the amount of high school students that fit on a bus or the amount of students above the measurement that would fit on that bus. And the answer was still no. So I will continue to push. But as of right now, it will be the 17 buses that are funded through PED and the 3 buses that are not funded through PED because they are outside of the Albuquerque Public Schools boundary. So remember that kerfuffle for going into this year, they won't fund those. We are going to, again, encourage parents that live very, very close to the border of Albuquerque and Rio Rancho to come into Albuquerque to use a bus stop. Because the 3 buses in Rio Rancho are completely full. And that's with them pared down to the bare minimum of stops. They're at capacity. So we'll keep pushing for that. I mean, even I do that. Like my kids, I drive them into Albuquerque to get a bus so that they're able to utilize the Albuquerque buses, but not everyone's able or willing to do that, but I'll keep trying. And yeah, that's where we're at for buses, but exciting stuff coming up, getting the course catalog stuff prepped and ready for course descriptions. It's like my favorite time of the year because I just love reading the course descriptions. They're so much fun. And we are also getting more and more in the data dashboards for Jake and the 2 principals to use so that we have an enrollment dashboard this year. So it kind of unites all of the enrollment process into one place and all the key players have a tab that lets them work on their parts, which is making it much less repetitive. Because sometimes multiple people were doing kind of a step that really could have been consolidated. So trying to be more efficient with the people and make their job a little bit easier. And then the data dashboards. And then we also have an admin dashboard that we've been piloting this year. And then it'll be much more finessed and refined next year. One-stop shop for what you need to do as an admin for the whole year. All your drills, all of your evals, all your walkthroughs, just everything possible. And again, that's multiple people contributing to it because it's, you know, compliance and testing and scheduling. And yeah, that's the overview of my big parts.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions or clarification needed by the board?
Thank you, Alicia.
As always, reach out if you guys end up with any questions later on. I know tonight's meeting is chock full, so if something comes up later, feel free to shoot me an email anytime.
Absolutely. One quick question. Are we finally happy with our uniform provider? Or are we still
Oh,
hunting?
I guess there is one update for them. We have very few complaints, like
Good.
very, very few. I think all year of every school that uses them, I think I had 5 complaints. And most of them are, well, I really wanted this color and they told me it was out of stock and now they took forever to ship it. And it's like, well, they said it was out of stock. Like I think they've done really well. What they did this year, you guys are such a big part of their business at this point that they actually created a space that's just a warehouse for Explore Academy only within their system. So what they're doing is they did an analysis from June of last year through April of this year of the most common colors and sizes and items ordered ever. And then they pre-printed a whole bunch of those super common ones because their goal was to have an on-demand store where they'll have 2 websites, basically the site for all custom, whatever you want, any color, you know, but it's all based on availability and if it's in stock. But then the other version is this will ship today. And so, or you can pick it up today. They're off Manal. So if somebody works in Albuquerque or lives around there, they could just pick it up. So they're going to try that warehouse model this year to get stuff out quick. I think they want to compete with the Amazon option that ships Prime and is more expensive. And they want to make it the same cheap price, but go out quick. So they are rolling that out. They said the website should be ready to go by summer. And then people will have an on-demand store where if it's on this store, it is in stock and we'll send it to you today. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is really cool. Well, good
So,
for
and
them.
we also added a Letterman looking jacket for youth because they're seeing all the older kids with that style of jacket and they're just like, I want that. And partly it was like, no, that's a rite of passage. But then it's like, no, get excited about that era coming up. And so it's this tiny, cute little Letterman looking jacket, except for it's for littles. And it is the most adorable thing ever. So that's a jacket option that we're offering now, which I just think so cute. So I'm gonna work with the new principal at the elementary to see if they want to do some type of like patches where if you have perfect attendance or other kind of milestones at K5, maybe you can do little patches on your little Letterman jacket. Maybe they can buy some as prizes to give out, you know, and things. So I just thought that would be cute. But we did add, that's only a new item really we added because we offer basically everything under the sun at this point. All textures, all cuts, like we just kind of opened the floodgates after last year and said, sure, add it. Well, whatever people want, give the people what they want. Just put the Explore logo on it.
All right. Woohoo.
Yay.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for such a fast and detailed report. I read it all and it looks great. So thank you once again. I can't say thank you enough.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you for all you do, especially the long meetings like this one. We appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Item 7C, general updates and reminders. Karen, the floor is yours.
And I'll try to be just as quick. I did send out some information about preparing your evaluations. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you set a deadline for them to return, for the board members to return their input. I do have to get the head administrator form out to you, but I'm in need of a few things from Jake and Patrick first. But again, reminder that every year we do, not we, the board does evaluations for your head administrator, the director of operations, and then a self-assessment on the governing board as a whole, not your individual performance. I have sent things out, and if you have other questions, I'm happy to entertain those now or individually later. I would ask, I did want to offer that I could probably make those forms in a Google form, Chair Molina, if that would help for completing and compiling the data from all board members.
Sure. Is everyone on the board familiar with Google Docs and how to operate that? Then let's do it. I think it's great.
I just think it would make it a little bit easier for you to compile, and then we can discuss consensus, or board can discuss consensus in June.
Correct.
And do you want to set a deadline date for when that's going to, I guess we can work on the forms and get that out with a deadline with that.
Correct. I was just going to say, let me send that out with an email.
Yeah, sounds good. So let's get together on that. If you haven't already checked that email, please look for the email on evaluation guidance. The director of charter schools division is no longer has left her position, and so I did attach a letter there that we received advising school leaders. You are all school leaders, to know that the director, Karina Chavez, is no longer director. Deputy Director Bridget Russell, Dr. Russell, is acting director in the interim while they seek a new director. That is a governor appointed position, so I don't know that Bridget would want it or is vying for it, but I just wanted you to know that that change has happened at the Charter Schools Division. And then conference coming up in June. Some of you are going. Great. There's a link. Last I checked, which was yesterday, they didn't have the detailed schedule up yet, but I was hoping they would. If you want to, that link will take you to the site and you can keep monitoring when the schedule comes available. And then lastly, mandatory training requirements, and happy to report that all members have either completed or done a couple of hours. So we have Mr. Hamilton working on his to get done. We're reaching the finish line here. So he has a few more to do. And that's it.
Excellent.
For that.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Any questions for Karen and her update? All right. Yeah, forge on, everybody. I got to go up to Santa Fe last week and do a trial run of the presentation I'm doing with Dr. Kim Faulkner on the statistics presentation, the data presentation that we've developed, and got some interesting feedback from the audience. They were all PED data people and got some good feedback. But I helped them understand that it's this forum, these types of people that are making decisions based on information you're giving us, and that it has to be robust. So it was a little bit different than what you're actually going to see at the conference, but it was still a very good meeting. So that was good fun. All right. I think we are on to item number 8, which are amendment requests. We have one on additional space at Galton and one on increasing the enrollment gap.
So whenever a charter school adds additional square footage, or whether that's through a construction addition or remodel, or through another building, we are required to notify the Public Education Commission. And the Galton Gym and additional classroom space has not been reported to them. So that's what that request is about. It's more of a notification, but we still have to file it. I could share the screen if you'd like, but in summary, would you like me to share the screen of the form?
Sure.
In summary, we're just reporting that there has been, you are seeing the additional square footage form, right? Okay. So just that the current square footage prior to the addition, and then an addition of this amount. Some of it is still not occupiable, as you all know. There's a gym in the black box theater, and then classrooms and restroom, bank. We are required to do all these formalities, but though we're submitting an amendment request for an enrollment cap, this square footage is regardless of that, right? To add a gym, a black box theater, additional classroom space, whether or not the enrollment cap increase is approved, we are able to occupy the classroom space, but not the gym and black box theater until goal is November, but once construction has passed all inspections and we get that all worked out. So I just need approval for this and then signatures to submit to the PEC. They'll probably put it on the June agenda. Do you have any questions about this, or should I go over the other amendment request immediately?
I don't have any questions about this, and I suppose we could vote on them separately. I don't see that. I think that's a problem.
You can do them together. I don't care. I just need it
Yeah.
on the minutes.
Yeah. I move to approve the amendment request for the additional space at Galton. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? Very good. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the amendment request for Galton's additional space?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
um, excuse me, Heather
Aye.
and Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
Dottie McKinney, aye.
Thank you. And let's take a peek at the enrollment cap.
Both pasting stuff in there. Let me go to the other one. So now the enrollment cap has to do with, programmatic increases in some of the things that you've been talking about. And getting that enrollment cap increase so that we can proceed. But let me just share that. I think it's this one. Enrollment cap. Okay. So this one is very similar form from the PEC. Basically, it asks for our current enrollment cap, our enrollment for this year, and what are we asking for? That this would not take effect any sooner than the following school year, but this will help us have some leverage in facilities and whatnot if we have a higher enrollment cap. So the rationale goes on to explain about increasing programmatic offerings, serving more students. It is an increase of more than 20 seats or 20% of current enrollment. So they want evidence that our model is working and effective. Well, we've been a designated spotlight school for the last 3 years. I think that says it all. Talking about the wait list here and how many kids have been on the wait list and the rate of applications to justify the increase. Not applicable for this one. We've been open longer. And then there's a narrative here just on topics that the PEC requires us to list: staffing, enrollment targets, advertising and marketing, curriculum assessment and instruction, resources and budget, community. Of course, for the community section, we are including some of the not only the attendance and presentations made by Mr. Colander at the May 1st input hearing, but also the survey that went out about programs. And then the capacity of the facility is important to the PEC because we can't exceed capacity. But currently our e-occupancy indicates that actually I need to up this because I got an updated masthead one with the remodel. It's actually higher, so it actually is over 5,000. The actual on our e-occupancy, what's listed on our e-occupancy, without including the gym and the black box theater, because obviously we haven't gotten approved occupancy for those spaces yet. And so again, like I asked for approval to request this enrollment increase. I do not project that we will get to this number anytime soon, but having that in place and approved from the PEC will help you with any long-term plans and facility negotiations you might want to pursue in the future.
Very good. All right. Having that presented, I move to approve the amendment request to increase our enrollment cap as presented. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Miss Heather. All right. Any further questions or discussion? Well then, Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to approve the amendment request to increase our enrollment cap?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina,
Aye.
Martha Barrera,
Aye.
Heather Anderson,
Aye.
and Aaron Hamilton,
Aye.
and Dottie McKinney, aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. I want to move to defer our school year 26 contracts for legal services and financial services to our June meeting. I don't think we have all the information we need anyway tonight, so that's my motion. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Very good. And then I don't know if we need to discuss that, but I want to get a little bit more information, especially on the legal services one, before we bring it to the board. So thank you for that. Any further discussion?
I only have one question. Were these
Sir.
both coming from like a RFP?
No, it's their contracts are 1-year contracts. They're year-to-year contracts. So
Okay.
And though Axioms exceeds the $60,000 limit, they provided a quote based on a third-party agreement, procurement agreement through ACES, not CES, but a similar procurement vehicle that did do an RFP.
all right. All right, Ms. Study, would you please conduct a roll call vote to move our school year 2026 contracts topic for legal services and financial services to June?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina.
Aye.
Martha Barrera.
Aye.
Heather Anderson.
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
And Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Very good. Thank you all. Section 8, item C, I move to approve going into a closed session to discuss personal matters with regards to Miss Brianna Andrus. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Miss Heather. Miss Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to enter us into a closed session to discuss the personal matters with regards to Brianna Andrus?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina.
Aye.
Martha Barrera.
Aye.
Heather Anderson.
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
And Dottie McKinney. Aye.
All right, Miss Karen. Welcome back, everyone. I will move to approve closing the closed session where we discuss the personal matter for Brianna Andrus. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dottie, would you please conduct a roll call vote to close the closed session where we discuss the personal matter for Miss Brianna Andrus?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina.
Aye.
Martha Barrera. Heather Anderson.
Aye.
And Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
Dottie McKinney. Aye.
Excellent. And after much discussion, I would like to make the motion to have Mr. Colander reevaluate the contract language for Miss Brianna Andrus, do an appropriate investigation and make any decisions you feel are appropriate. A second, please.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion, board members? We had a pretty good chat over on the other side. Very good. Ms. Dye, would you please conduct a roll call vote to have Mr. Colander reevaluate Miss Andrus's contract consideration and to perform a complete investigation to make the appropriate decision?
Yes, sir. Patrick Molina.
Aye.
Martha Barrera.
Aye.
Heather Anderson.
Aye.
Aaron Hamilton.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Very fruitful conversation. Miss Andrus, again, thank you so much for attending and coming to the closed session. All right, we are on item 9. We're getting close to the end. Board comments. I'd like to open it up to the board for any questions, comments, whatnot. So the floor is open. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I received an email yesterday through my connections and association with Cooperative Educational Services. I was copied on an email from Power School stating that the troubles that everybody had been having, I guess, starting in December with hacking, that evidently the hacker is now targeting individual schools. And so I don't know if our school has been informed of that. I can forward you the email, everyone, if you're interested.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
That to be on high alert.
we would want to share that with our IT folks. And I do want to say that that when this occurred, there were several things that have already been done to protect from that, but I would like to share that with IT folks for sure.
Hackers are getting more and more aggressive, especially with AI. AI is actually helping the hackers.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dottie. That's super. I mean, not that it's happening, but super that you got the email and that you'll share it. So
Yes,
thank
I'll
you.
share it with all of you after the meeting. I'll email you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Martha, Heather, Aaron, anything? No. Graduation next Friday. I'll be there. I love that. It's so great to watch the kids walk across the stage. It's absolutely fantastic. That's one of my two humble paychecks for this job is graduation and then the student and faculty spotlights that we do at these meetings. That's why I keep on coming back. Well, very good. If there are no other board comments, we'd like to open this up to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, you are limited to 3 minutes, and that 3 minutes will be held. Please state your name, your relationship to the school, and the topic of your comment. No action will be taken, no questions will be answered, and board members will acknowledge the receipt of your information. And we will more than likely refer to staff any action items as we see fit. And we may refer the matter to a next agenda. Okay, so if you're expecting a conversation, that's not going to happen. We will hear your comment. Okay, so if you have questions for us to answer, they will not be answered during public comment. I just want to make sure that we've set the expectations for everyone so that there are no hurt feelings or misunderstandings. All right, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand and we will bring you into the panel.
We have Ms. Greaves who already signed up, and I just wanted to there's still several attendees in the audience, so just want to remind you that the way to offer public comment or sign up for public comment is to either raise your digital hand or type your name and the topic into the chat, and not any description, just your name and what you want to speak about. Well, I guess it doesn't matter for this one, just your name is fine. In the chat, it's now open for you to use or raise your digital hand. And with that, I'm going to promote Ms. Greaves to the panel as she has her hand raised and was the first to sign up earlier.
Absolutely.
And it's
Ms.
3
Greaves?
minutes.
Yes, 3 minutes. Correct. 3 minutes. Ms. Greaves, you have the floor.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. To be clear, the contract of Brianna Andrews was reconsidered, whereas my own contract was not. This is inequitable treatment. If I may, I would like to first offer my apologies regarding raising my hand, apparently too much, according to you, sir. I can tend to be rather passionate about ethics, transparency, and my responsibilities as an educator. I would also like to let families know that we are only the top 5 of a very specific demographic, not including English language learners and students of color, in which case we are quite low. My name is Amanda Greaves. I'm a teacher at Explore Academy, and I appear before this body as a certified educator currently employed to formally place into the public record a set of allegations and documented grievances implicating multiple ongoing violations of Explore Academy codes of conduct, federal and state statutory law, administrative code, and the contractual and fiduciary duties owed to students, employees, and public stakeholders, including parents. I would like to start at the end in the event I run out of time, given the 3-minute limit. I would like to first thank Ms. Anderson for her queries, as she is clearly invested in seeking equitable agency for all children of Explore Academy. And to speak to the rhetoric of Mr. Molina, his quote, thumbs up, honestly, we have been penalized because of all of the charter schools in New Mexico. We may be top 5 for students not of color, that is. However, much of our funding comes from students of color, and we are just as low in that regard as the next school. In fact, there are schools that surpass Explore Academy in terms of meeting the needs of Native New Mexican students, English
30
language
seconds.
learners, and at-risk youth. This means we are one of the top 5, and I'm keeping track on my own phone, and I am not within 3 seconds. 5
said
schools
30.
that come up lacking when it comes to meeting the needs of students. Okay, so if I have 3 seconds, then
10 seconds.
Justin Bayardo still has access to our students, which is a FERPA violation. And
And that is time, ma'am. That is time.
PEOC. I will be making a complaint to the PEC about the time limit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the... Yes, Miss Lisa Marie Williams Black has her hand up.
Sorry.
Okay. Hi,
Miss
guys.
Black, you have the floor.
I just, now that the new calendar has been voted on, my request is that, and it's the 20-day calendar. I'm really confused about the 4 days, both at the start of the school year and at the end of the school year, that aren't part of any term. And from the perspective of a high school student, having a bridge program, like a summer bridge, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense when you have kids on totally different tracks with the individualized education. So I'm just confused and would love further clarification from the administration as soon as possible. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with our end of our summer and beginning of the school year, and how this is all going to work, and family plans with grandparents and such. So if you guys can get that together really soon, or at least some semblance of what does it mean? What are those 4 days of education if you're not in a term? Are you with the teachers you're going to be starting the term with? You know, what is happening during those 4 first days of school and those 4 last days of school? Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Miss Williams Black. We will absolutely refer this to Jake Colander and the administration. And I know this is one of the top priorities that they're working on right now. So thank you very, very much for your comments.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Anyone else in our attendees panel would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand. Miss Monty Bigger.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Miss Bigger, you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am a parent of an incoming senior. He's been there for 3 years since his freshman year. And I would just like to know, there has been rumor, and I know how rumors are, that the elementary campus is up for sale. There also is rumor that the Journal Center, that is currently where the newspaper is printed, has been purchased by Explore Academy. And so I know you can't answer questions, but I would sure like to see those addressed at some point, because when you're talking about budget issues and shortfalls in budgets, it seems kind of odd that if it is true that we're putting buildings up for sale and buying buildings, that maybe our priorities are just a little bit off.
All right. Thank you, Miss Bigger. More to come on all of that. And yes, I will say there is a little bit of a rumor mill going on out there, but more to come on that.
Thank you. I appreciate your understanding.
And we will have some information coming out to the community soon. It's a little bit early right now in the process, but we will be sharing information in the coming months. Okay. Thank you, Miss Bigger. Anyone else in our attendees gallery who would like to make a comment? Miss Greaves, we've given you your 3 minutes. Thank you for raising your hand, but we've heard your comments. Thank you. All right. With having said that, our public comment session has come to a close. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. And before we adjourn, I wanted to thank everyone on this call, everyone in the gallery, and especially the board members for hosting a very long, very fruitful, and very difficult and challenging meeting. The decisions made tonight by no means were easy to come about with, but we've done the best with what we have, and look forward to hopefully changing it in the near future for future school years. I hereby adjourn our meeting at 9:38 p.m.